In the year 2045, Kurum Corporation, headed by the genius Lee Se-jin, developed a hyper-realistic virtual game that they named Ares. The game was well received, and in no time, it clocked over 1 billion users. They added an event in the game where the players are required to break a particular wooden doll in just 10 strikes to receive a guaranteed expensive game capsule that is worth 50 million won, plus 5 bonus points to all stats. For over a year since the game launched, no player has been able to clear the event. Even the game's customer care center is already scared that they are going to receive backlash with claims that the game added an impossible event that cannot be cleared. The relations officer is about to tender his resignation letter when an unknown player, obviously our MC, steps up to take on the challenge. Everyone doesn't pay attention to him until he whips out his sword to land a single critical hit that cuts the wooden doll in half. This shocks everyone since he is the first ever person to have cleared the event. The team leader immediately orders a background check on the dude, and they realize that the sword he used is an epic weapon, which is nothing too serious. This further increases their interest in him since he was able to take down the doll with an epic weapon. Earlier, before clearing the quest, our MC, Kim Hyun-soo, had woken up from a dream where his father was burning and he failed to save him. He meets with his friend, Kim Jae-hoon, in the hospital lobby. Hyun-soo wears a hat and even has a face mask on, basically to hide his face. Jae-hoon requested a meeting with Hyun-soo, and his friend soon teases him about being hot. Hyun-soo angrily opens his face mask to reveal the burnt scar underneath it. Jae-hoon then suggests that they move to the main topic of their discussion. He asks Hyun-soo if he knows about the game called Ares, but our MC has been living under a rock, and he has no idea what his friend is talking about. Jae-hoon tells him a quick summary about the game before revealing that there is an event in the game, which is meant for only beginners. Jae-hoon tells him that no one has succeeded in clearing the event, and this includes all the big names. Jae-hoon lets his friend know the reward that comes with clearing the event, and he suggests that they give it a try. Hyun-soo is surprised that he is telling him that they should try it, since millions of people have already failed to clear the event. Jae-hoon admits that it is going to be hard, but he doesn't think it is impossible to clear. Jae-hoon believes that they have a chance to clear the event with Hyun-soo's cooperation. Hyun-soo is still confused about all of these, and Jae-hoon takes him to the 10 million won capsule that he bought so he could try out the game. Hyun-soo is shocked to hear that his friend spent 10 million on a game capsule. Our MC cannot believe that the game capsule is that expensive, and over 1 billion people are playing it. Jae-hoon believes that it is worth the investment, and he tells Hyun-soo that if things go well, he will get some amazing rewards. Apparently, real-world currencies are being traded in the game, and this has made more people join the game. Jae-hoon is already tired of explaining, and he suggests that Hyun-soo jump into the capsule and start up the game. Hyun-soo is not excited the same way Jae-hoon is, and he asks him where he got the capsule. Jae-hoon tells him to forget about where the capsule came from and just focus on the fact that they can earn amazing rewards with it. Hyun-soo remains the doubting Thomas, and he says there is no guarantee that they are going to earn anything in the game. Hyun-soo wonders what is wrong with his friend. Jae-hoon claims that it is an investment and reminds Hyun-soo that they have a chance with him. Hyun-soo doesn't know what Jae-hoon is talking about, and Jae-hoon explains that in the Ares game there is a blacksmith class. Jae-hoon believes that this is an awesome thing because Hyun-soo just happens to be the only son of a world-famous blacksmith. Hyun-soo finally understands what his friend has been driving at from the start. Hyun-soo then removes his cap to show his friend what he looks like after the accident he had. Hyun-soo looks badly burned with scars all over his head, and he tells Jae-hoon that he is not in condition to try out anything. It turns out that his father was involved in a fire accident at his workshop, and when Hyun-soo tried to rescue him, he got burned too. Even though he managed to save his father, he never regained consciousness. To cover the medical expenses, Hyun-soo was forced to do menial jobs. He was working one day when he was ordered by his supervisor to use the hammer to drive a nail. Hyun-soo was always perfect with the hammer since he had been doing it for over 10 years, but that very day, he realized he could no longer use the hammer very well. He has not been able to put any strength into his right arm, and because of this, he doesn't think he is fit to do anything related to blacksmithing. Hyun-soo lets his friend know that he is only trying to help, but he tells him that he will be fine. Hyun-soo turns around to leave while urging Jae-hoon to return the game capsule and not throw away 10 million won. Just as he is about to open the door, Jae-hoon stops him, calling him the real idiot. He reminds him that he is working his soul and body off just to pay for his father's medical bills, and the jobs he is even doing are not sustainable. Jae-hoon lets him know that the game has what it takes to pay for all of his treatments and make him whole. Jae-hoon uses reverse psychology on him, telling him that he was never a quitter. Jae-hoon lets him know that he is going to pay for the capsule, and all he wants from him is to listen to him. Jae-hoon urges him to give it just one try, and he is free to quit if he doesn't like it. Hyun-soo refuses to give a reply, and he just walks out. While he is at work, Hyun-soo can't forget what his friend told him. It keeps ringing in his head, but he tries to shift it aside because he needs to work and earn money for his father's treatment. Just then, he hears the sound of metal hitting each other, and this reminds him of everything that he has missed. This sparks his curiosity, and he decides to check out the game. He heads to the game capsule, and his desire to get back what he has lost pushes him to enter the capsule. He finds himself in the character creation space, and when he is asked to set his nickname, he uses his regular name. The system kicks into play, and it starts to create his character according to his body type. Hyunsu is surprised when he realizes that his character is being created without any blemish. After creating what appears to be the perfect character with spotless skin, he is asked if he wants to proceed with it. Without thinking twice, he quickly says yes. Hyunsu cannot believe that the strength in his right hand has also returned, and he finally lets off a short smile. He considers himself to be in Ji-hoon's debt, and he vows to pay it back. The game then spawns him in a random territory, which is the Barden territory, the beginner zone. He walks around the territory and soon finds Ren's smithy. Inside the smithy, the blacksmith is working on a sword, and he is smashing the metal really hard until Hyunsu shows up, telling him that he is doing everything wrong. The man is shocked to hear this, and he is forced to ask to confirm. Hyunsu repeats what he said, telling the man that he is doing it the wrong way. Hyunsu knows that he is trying to forge a strong sword, but he assures him that the method he is using will never create something good. The blacksmith still remains confused, and Hyunsu claims that he is just trying to help so he doesn't end up creating trash. The blacksmith is a bit pissed that a nobody like Hyunsu is trying to tell him his job. He then hands him the mallet, telling him to try to forge the sword by himself. The blacksmith lets Hyunsu know that he is going to be watching him. Apparently, Hyunsu was initially looking for a way to win the blacksmith's favor so he could then use his forge. But since he had proposed something else, Hyunsu thinks it is much better. Hyunsu then tells the blacksmith that he is going to forge the sword, but he tells him that he has one condition. The blacksmith asks him what it is, and Hyunsu reveals that he will get to keep whatever sword he forges. In return for this, Hyunsu promises to show the blacksmith how to go about the process. The blacksmith cannot believe just how confident Hyunsu is, and he decides to agree to the condition. However, he lets him know that if he fails to forge a good sword, just like he claims, there will be consequences. Without hesitation, Hyunsu agrees to this. Hyunsu steps up to the forge, and the moment he prepares to start pounding the metal, he realizes that it has been 3 years since he last did something like that. Nonetheless, he believes that he still has what it takes inside him to pull it off. Hyunsu raises his hammer, and he starts smashing the metal. With every strike, his dull senses start coming back to life. Hyunsu feels alive again, which is something he has not felt in a long time. With all the excitement in the world, he continues smashing the metal. Meanwhile, the blacksmith is still watching him, but he doesn't believe that Hyunsu can pull it off because he is just an outsider. However, his perspective starts to change when he sees the way Hyunsu is moving, and he figures out that he has done it before, although he doesn't think he has the professional skill in him. He soon notices that Hyunsu is smiling like he is enjoying the entire process. But even with this, the blacksmith doesn't think it means anything. In no time, the blacksmith starts to convince himself that he might have wasted his time. Suddenly, Hyunsu uses a professional move, which entails the folding, reattaching, and then refining of the steel. This is something that removes impurities, and the blacksmith is shocked that he has never thought of the method before, which is quite simple. The blacksmith still doesn't want to believe that Hyunsu is getting it right, and he uses his appraisal skill. He is shocked when he realizes that the steel has improved from D grade to C grade. The blacksmith almost loses his mind when he sees this. He knows that he has forged C grade steel before, but he has never encountered such a jump in such a short time. The blacksmith finally realizes that Hyunsu might not be bluffing when he claims that he is talented. However, he still believes that he has reached his limit because there is no way he can go past what he just witnessed. He convinces himself that there is no way Hyunsu is better than him when it comes to the art of blacksmithing. The blacksmith continues watching until he falls asleep. When he wakes up, it is already daybreak, and to his utmost surprise, Hyunsu is still at the forge. He is still pounding the steel with the same method throughout the night. When he uses his appraisal, the blacksmith is shocked to see that it has been upgraded to B grade. The blacksmith cannot believe that Hyunsu was able to reach B grade, and with what he is looking at, Hyunsu is not stopping anytime soon. Momentarily, Hyunsu gets tired, and just as he is about to drop the sword, the blacksmith collects it from him, asking him what needs to be done as he is ready to follow his instructions. Hyunsu smiles when the blacksmith offers to help, and he thanks him for it. The two then get down to working on the sword. The blacksmith brings out his notebook and starts putting down some instructions. In no time, Hyunsu pushes the steel to A grade. The blacksmith is forced to openly admit that Hyunsu is amazing because he has never come across a rare grade item in the beginner zone. Apparently, with this, Hyunsu can forge a one-of-a-kind sword. While the blacksmith is all happy and excited, Hyunsu shocks him, telling him that it is not worth celebrating just yet. The blacksmith is shocked to hear this, and Hyunsu points out the fact that the sword's hilt is not done yet, and the edge needs to be even sharper. The blacksmith looks like a total beginner when Hyunsu lets him know that the blade hasn't reached peak sharpness. The blacksmith admits that he has never met someone like Hyunsu before, and he reveals that he has been hammering since he was a kid. Since Hyunsu plans to take a sword with him, the blacksmith suggests that he forge another one. This time around, the blacksmith brings out the rare forging material, mithril. The blacksmith reveals that the mithril is a family heirloom passed down through generations, and Hyunsu asks why he would give him the material. The blacksmith confesses that he has learned a lot from Hyunsu, and he wants to learn more. In addition to this, the blacksmith doesn't have the skill to forge the mithril, and he wants to see what kind of blade Hyunsu is going to create with it. The blacksmith mentions that he is getting the urge to protect Hyunsu. Hyunsu is blown away because mithril only exists in mythology, but he is finally getting the chance to work with something so legendary. Even though he has never worked with it before, Hyunsu is ready to take the risk and see what will come out of the forge. Since he has gotten new material, Hyunsu says he will have to start all over again. The blacksmith is happy to hear this, and he asks if he can join Hyunsu in making the sword. Hyunsu accepts his request since the blacksmith gave him something very rare and precious. The blacksmith doesn't stop there, and he even asks to call Hyunsu master. Hyunsu subtly rejects the offer since the blacksmith looks way older than him. With this, the two start working on the material, and a month later, Hyunsu is done forging his desired sword. After this, he cleared the event, and this was all the game's management center team could dig out concerning Hyunsu. Apparently, they can't know more about him because he insisted on staying so as to avoid paparazzi. The team continues tracking him, and they soon find out that he has entered the hunting training grounds. At the entrance, the instructor tries to dissuade Hyunsu from entering, claiming that he is not strong enough yet and that he should hunt a rabbit first. Hyunsu insists that he wants to stay but assures the instructor that he won't waste his time. The instructor, Relson, then tells him to pick a sword, but Hyunsu coldly tells the instructor that he brought his own sword, and this is what he plans to use. Apparently, Hyunsu stayed in the beginner zone for a month just to acquire crazy enough skills. He managed to get himself the beginner zone's only epic grade sword, but he is still level 1. When the creator of the game hears this, he suggests that they leave Hyunsu so that they can see how far he can go in the game. The hunting grounds instructor cannot believe that a level 1 player is insisting on using his own sword. The instructor makes fun of Hyunsu for trying to become a blacksmith in the game. He then reveals that the hunting grounds are a dangerous place filled with monsters everywhere. The instructor claims that a trained swordsman is much better than a dude with trash equipment. The instructor's affinity for Hyunsu soon reduces, showing that he is starting to hate his guts. Hyunsu is not surprised by this since he receives the same treatment in real life. Just then, Hyunsu tells Relson to put him through the toughest course in the hunting grounds because he is trying to surpass the best swordsmen who have come through there. This further pisses Relson off, and he decides to teach Hyunsu a lesson by putting him through a trial. He tells Hyunsu to follow him so he can give him a special trial that he can face. Relson leads him to the goblin's cage and he asks Hyunsu if he is sure that he truly wants to take on the trial, and he says yes. Relson angrily tells Hyunsu that he is not allowed to set foot in the hunting grounds for a week if he fails the trial. However, Hyunsu further taunts the instructor, asking him if the third stage is all that is available because he plans to clear all the stages at once. The instructor almost bursts out in anger because of the things that Hyunsu is saying. Without hesitation, he angrily opens the cage to the fourth stage, where a level 15 mad goblin resides. Apparently, only a small number of people usually go past the third stage, and there has not been a single person who has passed the fourth stage. Just then, Hyunsu finds himself going up against terrifying goblins. Hyunsu remains calm as the goblins run at him. He aims his weapon perfectly, while waiting for the annoying goblin that is leaping toward him. With just a single strike, Hyunsu cuts down the goblin with the confidence that there is no weapon in the region that can defeat his sword. He manages to take down one of the swift goblins, but the other one manages to land a critical hit to Hyunsu's tummy. Hyunsu falls to his knees in pain, and the instructor is already waiting to use the "I told you so" phrase. To his surprise, Hyunsu endured the hit and the pain that followed it. Apparently, Hyunsu has built up endurance and stamina over the past month that he has been forging the sword. However, his agility is still lacking, since he has not gotten the chance to work on it. While he is still trying to cope with the pain from the hit, the mad goblin comes running toward him. The goblin looks absolutely terrifying as he brandishes his weapon, ready to take Hyunsu down. To make things worse, Hyunsu gets hit with a status effect that causes dizziness and vision reduction. The instructor is impressed that Hyunsu is able to withstand everything up until that point, but he still believes that it is really the end for him. Hyunsu now finds himself facing off against two goblins. Instead of panicking, Hyunsu focuses everything on trusting the weapon that he personally created. Hyunsu concentrates on all his senses, and just as the goblins are about to hit him, he cuts them down. This leaves everyone watching, including the creator, the management team, and the instructor, in total disbelief. The instructor smiles, and his mood finally brightens up when he realizes that Hyunsu has something that no one else could. Relson assumes that Hyunsu has learned swordsmanship somewhere, but Hyunsu mentions that he was only taught that a blacksmith should be able to handle the weapons he makes. This is when Relson finally realizes what a true blacksmith he is, and judging by the wounds and scars on his arm, he realizes that Hyunsu is not a pushover. Relson has no choice but to apologize for his behavior, and his affinity immediately jumps to the max level. Just then, Relson comes up with a ridiculous offer as he asks Hyunsu if he is willing to become the Mad Lord. This is a legendary class, and when the management team hears this, they almost lose their minds. They cannot believe that Hyunsu has just been offered a class that even surpasses the epic class of the Mad Knight. This is obviously a good thing, but once done, there is no going back on it. Basically, the Mad Lord is a glorious being who leads hundreds of Mad Knights, and he is considered the protector of the game world. Relson eagerly waits for Hyunsu's answer, since it is a glorious offer, but surprisingly, Hyunsu rejects the proposal, saying he is a blacksmith, not a knight. Those who are watching from behind the scenes smile when he says this, and even the instructor is pleased with Hyunsu's answer. Hyunsu thought his life as a blacksmith was over, but the game has changed things for him, and he is not ready to give up on his life as a blacksmith. Just then, the instructor hands him a letter of recommendation, telling him to head to the Lord's castle because there is someone of high importance waiting for him there. As a reward for clearing the 4th stage, Relson gives him the rusty old armor that belonged to the former Mad Lord. Even though the armor is rusty and old, Relson believes that Hyunsu will be able to rejuvenate it and bring it back to life. Relson cheers Hyunsu on, telling him to continue taking on other impossible feats because he is the only one who can. The management team is glad that Hyunsu escaped a situation where he would have lost his potential. Apparently, there is a class that is known as the God of Blacksmiths, and this is the peak level when it comes to blacksmiths, and they are glad that Hyunsu is still on the path to get there. After clearing the training ground, Hyunsu is finally sent into the village to begin his real journey in the game. However, before he reaches the main stage, he logs out because he has things he has to attend to in real life too. Hyunsu is relieved that he is already getting used to the game, but at the same time, his account balance is going down. He figures out that he needs to cover his father's hospital bills and the living expenses too. He gets a call from Ji-hoon, who asks him if he has managed to clear the training ground because he has been so busy with work, which is why he has not logged in for a while. Hyunsu says yes, revealing that he just got a quest and he has also arrived at the territory village. Ji-hoon is glad to hear this, and he suggests that Hyunsu check out the auction house. This is a place where he will find in-game essentials like gear and items that are sold for gold. Apparently, 10 gold equals 10,000 won, and because of the real money trading thing, most people are already treating it as their real job. Ji-hoon confesses that this is the real reason he pulled Hyunsu into the game. Ji-hoon confesses that since he has been playing the game, he has never seen the type of amazing swords that Hyunsu and his father make. Ji-hoon is glad that Hyunsu has finally joined, because now they finally have a chance to start selling the best swords on the market. Hyunsu is grateful for what his friend has done, and he thanks him. Hyunsu then sits down to consume a bulk load of food because he is going to need his stamina to craft loads of items and sell them for gold. After this, he takes a jog while revealing his determination to make sure his father wakes up again. Later on, Hyunsu logs back into the game. He connects to the auction shop and he is asked to enter a shop name so that he can list his items there. Hyunsu then names it the Hyun's Forge. Hyunsu suddenly finds himself in the sky in a place called the Forge of Power. The system informs him that he now has what it takes to access the auction board anytime and anywhere. Apart from his current sword, the Lightbringer, he only has one test sword that he made at the forge. He checks out other swords that are in the test swords category, and he realizes that they are all selling for at least 70 gold coins. Since he wants to make materials like the sword, and his friend told him not to price it too low, he decides to place the asking price at 100 gold coins. Hyunsu puts the sword on the market and hopes for the best. He calls the sword Hyun's first sword, and players looking to buy a sword soon get a notification about the sword. The players are blown away that Hyunsu made the sword when he had not been given a sword. Because of how impressive the sword is, the bid continues going up. At the Golden Shield Guild, they learn about the sword and the fact that it comes with an enhancement option. The guild's vice master is not initially impressed because he claims that enhancement rates are pretty high when using lower tier materials. He believes that Hyunsu saved costs by using the same level of materials. The vice master admits that Hyunsu is pretty wise to have given the sword a name, which is the first sword. Just then, it dawns on them that their standings will increase if they are the first to buy Hyunsu's sword. Without hesitation, one of the guild members, Blam, makes the move and buys the sword. Meanwhile, Hyunsu is still worried that the sword might get sold when he gets the notification that his sword has been bought. Hyunsu is shocked to see this, and when he checks the adventurer's logs, He realizes that his sword was sold for over 1,000 gold coins. Hyunsu almost loses his mind since 1,000 gold coins is basically 1,000,000 won in the outside world. Hyunsu smiles like a baby, and he realizes that he might have finally hit the jackpot. He checks out who bought the sword, and it turns out to be the Golden Shield Guild. Hyunsu receives a message from Blam, telling him that he is from the Golden Shield Guild. Blam lets him know that he is free to come over at any time because they are interested in talents like his. Basically, they are offering him an exclusive sales contract or guild membership if he wants it. Apparently, they are a blacksmithing guild, and they have over 780,000 followers. Ji-hoon once told him that it is harder to have followers than to level up because more players mean more profit. Hyunsu checks out his forge's followers, and he realizes that they are 82, but he continues receiving requests from several other guilds. Basically, blacksmiths are of more importance in the game than in the real world. After all, the game needs competent blacksmiths to help create weapons, gear, and other items. Even with all the tempting offers, Hyunsu doesn't think it is right for him to join a guild yet. This is because he has not even shown half of his skill yet. And to progress further, he heads to the Lord's Manor. Meanwhile, the Lord Barnes is trying to restore an important item, and one of his subjects tells him that they can only get a capable restorer in the capital. This is because the restorers are a proud bunch and would not want to travel down to Barden. The Lord knows this, but he is not ready to leave his region and travel all the way to the capital. It turns out that the item he is trying to restore is a very important bow left behind by his father. In a shocking revelation, the dude, Bell, speaking to the Lord is a rogue player who is disguised as a blacksmith. He has been trying to gain Barnes's trust for over a week, and it is finally working. Bell tells Barnes that he is willing to help him take the bow to the capital to help restore it to its perfect condition. Just then, Hyunsu enters the room, ultimately ruining his plan by telling Barnes that the bow can be restored in the territory. Barnes is shocked to hear this, and he lets Hyunsu know that the bow is already burnt and badly damaged. Barnes is curious about who Hyunsu is, and he asks his guards. His guards reveal that Hyunsu came with a recommendation letter from Relson. Barnes is shocked to hear that Relson personally recommended someone to him. Barnes immediately becomes interested, and he tells Hyunsu to tell him his experience and ability. Hyunsu replies that he is still a level 1 player, and for his class, he is unemployed. Bell hears this and butts into the conversation, saying Hyunsu is nothing but a piece of trash. He claims that the restoration skill can only be learned by a blacksmith at level 80. Bell screams at Hyunsu, telling him not to meddle in the business that he has already set up. Hyunsu finally speaks, and he tells Bell that he is making a mistake about the type of bow it is. He tells him that it is a horn bow, not a recurve bow. Bell is utterly confused when he hears this, and Hyunsu tells the Lord that he has already gotten the backstory of what happened to the bow. Apparently, the bow was given to Barnes's father by an outsider, and it was something no one had ever seen before. Before Hyunsu can continue, Barnes cuts him short, telling him that he has run out of patience with outsiders lecturing on his family heirloom. Hyunsu finally points out the fact that the bow might have been given to his father by an outsider, but it was crafted in the territory. Hyunsu mentions that he saw a buffalo drawing on the wall while he was entering the hall, and in his world, buffalo horns are special materials. However, he noticed something unusual with the bow. Instead of the usual cow string, a string from a whale is used in the bow. Hyunsu then asks the Lord if he can explain why this is. The Lord says yes, and he reveals that the outsider was his father's friend, and he was also a blacksmith. Apparently, the picture that Hyunsu saw was a depiction of a buffalo migration. It turns out that strings from the buffalo and whale are both rare resources that are found in the territory's swamps and ports. Barnes says the blacksmith made the bow with the rarest materials that the territory can provide. Barnes is impressed that Hyunsu is able to see through what a level 100 blacksmith failed to see through. At this point, Bell is already losing his mind because the Lord is starting to heap praises on Hyunsu. The Lord mentions that he didn't want the heirloom to go to waste and has been looking for someone competent to pass it on to. Because of the way Hyunsu handled the entire thing, the Lord decides to give him the task of restoring the bow. To make things juicy, he is going to receive 500 gold if he is able to restore the bow. Barnes then dismisses Bell, telling him that he will call for him again whenever he needs services. Bell leaves the room, burning with rage and the urge to enact vengeance on Hyunsu for ruining his plan. After Bell is gone, Barnes asks Hyunsu what they must do to restore the bow, and he reveals that they need to find buffalo horns and whale sinew. He adds that oak, mulberry bamboo, and proper tools will be needed. After identifying everything needed, Hyunsu acquires the restoration method for the bow. The system lets him know that the items will be destroyed if the restoration falls below 70%. Hyunsu touches the bow, and the memory of him and his father working on a bow together comes flooding in. Tears drop from his eyes as the sweet memories keep flooding in. Even his game capsule receives a 99.9% sync rate. Hyunsu is glad that he can properly craft, thanks to the skills that his father taught him. Just when he is about to begin the restoration, Barnes himself enters the room, telling Hyunsu that he is willing to assist him. Before they know it, they have been on it the entire day. Barnes can feel the strength in his arm weakening, but Hyunsu, on the other hand, is looking energetic and cheerful as he works on the bow. At some point, Barnes wants to rest, but Hyunsu lets him know that there is no room for this. He reminds him that the reason he started coming to the workshop to help is to personally restore his family's heirloom. Barnes agrees with Hyunsu and reveals that the bow is the only item carrying the memories of his father. Barnes then points out the fact that Hyunsu enjoys working on the bow, and Hyunsu confirms this, saying he has many precious memories about working on a bow. The two continue working on the bow, and before they know it, 20+ days have passed since they started. Alas, they reached the final day, and they were able to completely restore the marksman's horn bow. The system shows the incredible stats of the bow, and it turns out that it has been more refined than the original. With this, a mysterious outsider gave the Lord's family a bow again, and Barnes knows fully well that his father is going to be proud. They take the bow outside, and Hyunsu tells Barnes to test out the bow to see if it feels the same, just like he remembers it. Barnes fires the bow, and it releases so much aura that it destroys the target. Barnes then tells Hyunsu that it doesn't feel the same, and Hyunsu already fears that he means this in a bad way. However, Barnes clears the air with a bright smile, saying the bow feels more superior to what it was before. With this, Hyunsu completes the bow restoration quest with a result that exceeds 100%. Because of this, his intimacy with Barnes reaches the maximum level. Hyunsu heaves a sigh of relief that everything turned out so well. Barnes thanks Hyunsu because he can finally return to his duty. Barnes then mentions that the promised 500 gold coin reward is too small, and because of this, he increases it to 2,000 gold coins. In addition to this, he gives Hyunsu free access to the forge. Hyunsu is blown away when he hears that this is enough money for him in real-life currency. While he is still celebrating, Barnes asks him if he is interested in learning swordsmanship. Barnes reveals that before he became the Lord of the Land, he was a swordsman, and his sword art is the secret sword art that subdued the endless waves of monsters and brought stability to the territory. Barnes admits that Hyunsu is a worthy and capable blacksmith, but he can also see another great potential in him, which is the talent of a swordsman. He initially read this in Relson's recommendation letter, but he has managed to confirm it from the amazing display of strength that he has shown. Because of this, Barnes is willing to share some of his swordsmanship knowledge with Hyunsu. The system then displays the skill quest for Hyunsu to view. Apparently, the prime sword art is a grade B sword art, and Hyunsu is going to get 80% proficiency after training. Barnes lets Hyunsu know that he is about to go under intensive training, just like he made him do while they were in the workshop. A month after this, Hyunsu has worked on a gakgung, which is for his personal use. In addition, he has also worked on restoring the Mad Monarch's rusted armor. In addition to this, he has been training like crazy alongside Barnes. He managed to clear the prime sword art training, and Barnes asked him if he was finally ready to leave. Hyunsu says yes, while thanking Barnes because he has helped him finish all of his preparations. Barnes then asks him what his next plan is, and he reveals that he is planning on getting a new job. Hyunsu is now donning the restored Shining Mad Lord's armor. Barnes assures him that he is free to stop by any time if he needs help. Hyunsu is pleased with the equipment that he has crafted for himself because they are going to compensate for his low-level stats. To also help with his living expenses, he crafted rare-grade bows and put them up for sale on the auction house. This time around, he names the bow Hyun's second bow. He wonders just how much the bow is going to sell this time. Basically, the bow is made from rare materials, and it might never appear again. The Golden Shield Guildmaster, Rune, soon learns of the bow, and he realizes that Hyunsu has made something unbelievably incredible. This is because Hyunsu was able to craft the incredible bow using low-grade materials. Apparently, there is a saying that the game often bestows upon players a befitting job, skill, or title. They perform in such a way that moves the game's AI Rune, then assumes that Hyunsu holds a legendary blacksmith, just like the #1 blacksmith named Smith. When the final bid finally came in, the bow sold for over 2,000 gold, shocking Hyunsu. He can't believe that people are willing to pay such a ridiculous amount of money for a bow. In addition to this, he has amassed over 3,000 followers. Coming in with the followers are hundreds of guild requests and crafting requests that Hyunsu himself can't even keep up with. After he rounds up the sales, Hyunsu prepares himself to head into the Holy Land of the Blacksmiths, also known as the Tower of Blacksmiths. Momentarily, he arrives at the majestic Tower of the Blacksmith, and Hyunsu is blown away by the design. He arrives at the entrance to find a giant lock with a seal on it on the door, and he starts to wonder how he is supposed to enter the tower. The system informs him that he needs to strike the seal with a sword forged in the magical forge. Before doing anything, Hyunsu checks out the padlock and he realizes that it is a rock, and an igneous rock to be precise. Hyunsu is still wondering where the magical forge is when he is suddenly teleported into the forge. The system informs him that he is liable to receive training to craft the sword he needs for the test. In addition to this, materials and tools will be given to him without limits. He also learns that the crafting time is significantly reduced compared to a normal smithy. However, whatever sword he crafts in the forge can only be used for the test and nothing else. Hyunsu starts to wonder what the test is all about. He doesn't know if it is about forging skills or something else. Meanwhile, the master of the tower, Dang, is already convinced that no one is really interested in blacksmithing for the love of it again. Dang has given up on seeing people who love blacksmithing for what it really is, and he just grants the blacksmith title to whoever wants it, since the people just want the title for their selfish reasons. Dang is pretty sure that no one will ever be able to slice the sealing stone. Meanwhile, Hyunsu has decided on what sword he is going to craft, and he has picked the Damascus sword. This is a sword that can only be crafted by the highest grade blacksmiths. Since all the materials are available to him, Hyunsu wants to give it a try. He remembers his daddy once telling him that a sword actually has what it takes to cut a sword, and he taught him how to do it back then. Hyunsu is confident that he should be able to clear the mission too. Hyunsu considers himself lucky because everything he needs is right there for him, and even the crafting time has been reduced. Hyunsu smiles in excitement because he is about to work on a sword the way he wants, which is something that has not happened in a while. Dang is sleeping and snoring when he suddenly wakes up to the strange vibration rocking the tower. He is shocked when he realizes that the tower is actually shaking because someone is hammering. Dang doesn't want to believe his eyes until he looks through the window to see that the entrance lock has been cut off easily. Dang immediately heads to the entrance as Hyunsu is entering, and he concludes that the god of blacksmiths has finally appeared. Hyunsu nervously asks Dang if he passed the test. Dang mentions that all they have been doing is measuring ability through the stone, but Hyunsu sliced the stone in half, which means they couldn't get a measurement. Hyunsu hears this and assumes that he is about to undergo a retest. Dang then leads him to a magic circle, and he reveals that it is a summoning circle. Dang picks up a hammer and presents it to Hyunsu, saying it is his. Hyunsu is confused by this, but when he collects the hammer, the system informs him that he has received the Hammer of the Covenant. In addition to receiving the hammer, an SS-grade quest is bound to follow. Dang then pushes Hyunsu into the summoning circle, telling him that there is a true test that he has to take. Momentarily, he finds himself in a strange area, and the details of the quest finally appear. The system tells him that he must subjugate the invading orc army, and Hyunsu looks around to see a horde of orc army rushing toward him. Hyunsu almost craps his pants when he sees this, leaving him to wonder if he has been given a blacksmith quest. Behind him are 50 warriors, and they believe him to be a reinforcement from Dang. The system then tells him that he has to obtain 70 contributions among the 50 brave warriors to pass the test. The leader of the subjugation unit, Hans, specially welcomes Hyunsu, and he tells Hyunsu that the orc invasion has become rampant recently. He reveals that their weapons have been damaged in the battle against the orcs, and they need Hyunsu to help them repair the swords with his skill. Hyunsu tells Hans that they are mistaken because he hasn't changed his class to blacksmith, which means he can't yet use the skill. Hans then asks him about the hammer in his hand, and Hyunsu nervously reveals that he got the hammer during his advancement test. Hyunsu explains that he was merely sent to take an additional test, and this was when it dawned on Hans that Hyunsu doesn't have real battle experience yet. Hyunsu then confesses that his combat level is still at the beginner stage. Hans's expression immediately changes when he hears this because they were expecting someone useful, but they seem to have been sent someone they need to start lecturing on how things are done. Hans then tells Hyunsu to stay at the watchtower, where it is safe until they return from battle. Just then, an axe comes flying toward Hans, and Hyunsu comes to his rescue by swiftly slashing down the axe. Hans's eyes light up in shock and amazement when he sees this. Hyunsu admits that he is inexperienced, but he asks if he can join the battle. Hans agrees, and Hyunsu follows the unit to the battlefield. He is hoping that he will be fine if he is able to fight the orcs the same way he fought the goblins. Hans then orders Hyunsu to follow Ben's squad, and he will be the one to give him instructions on how to move. In no time, Hyunsu finds himself facing off against the orcs, and he realizes that they are quite different from the goblins. Hyunsu finally steps into battle with the conviction that he is not going to lose. The first orc that comes running at him loses his head faster than he can blink. Just from defeating one orc, Hyunsu gained 86 experience points, and he smiles because the month he spent training alongside Barnes wasn't a waste. Hyunsu also levels up even though he is still jobless, and when Ben sees this, he realizes that Hyunsu is an amazing fellow. However, talking to Hyunsu makes Ben lose concentration, and when Hyunsu notices that Ben is about to be overwhelmed by an orc, he switches from his sword to his bow. Hyunsu fires a pinpoint arrow that heads straight for the orc, and before the orc senses the arrow, it is already too late. The arrow impales him and sends him flying with immense pressure. Hyunsu doesn't stop there as he fires another arrow that smashes an orc's head. Hyunsu levels up again, but Ben is more impressed with the fact that Hyunsu is able to take down a huge orc with just an arrow. Hans screams at Ben, telling him to get out of his zone because the orcs are already converging on Hyunsu's position. Ben realizes that Hyunsu got into trouble because of him. Ben fears that Hyunsu is about to die because of him, but Hyunsu immediately swaps from his bow to his Lightbringer sword. Using the Lightbringer, he activates the flurry skill that indiscriminately wipes out every enemy within a 10-meter radius. The sword kicks into play, and Hyunsu easily cuts through the orcs that have surrounded him. He also levels up from this, and he managed to reach a 19% contribution. Seeing this, Hans is confident that they are going to be able to win the war as long as they have Hyunsu by their side. Hans then screams out so that his soldiers can hear, and he tells them they finally have a chance to defeat the orc unit, which is something they have never been able to do in the past. As the fight continues, the squad's morale also increases, and Hyunsu already sees himself as a member of the unit. Hyunsu continues fighting, and when he reaches 20% contribution, he realizes that his contribution is progressing a bit slower. Just then, the system informs him that he is defeating orcs faster than everyone else, and because of this, he has unlocked another chapter that has never been opened before. Momentarily, they encounter a level 51 orc warrior. When Hans sees this, he becomes concerned, and he immediately orders his men to stop advancing. It turns out that they have tried several times, but they have never been able to defeat the orc warrior. However, things are not looking good for them because they are surrounded by the orcs already. Hans fears that his overzealousness has caused him to go deep into enemy territory. Just then, Ben encourages the warriors, telling them that they are going to defeat the orcs. Hans agrees with him because they are tired of getting bullied by the orcs. Hans is staying on a hillside, and he notices that the team is rushing in to attack the orcs. He decides to cover them using his bow from where he is. He fires an arrow at the orc warrior, aiming directly for his head, but the arrow bounces off the orc's helmet. Seeing this, the team realizes that they might have to retreat to re-strategize. However, Hans makes a daring move to attack the orc warrior, and this leads to him losing his proficient hand. Hans finds himself at the mercy of the orc, and Hyunsu comes rushing from behind while calling his name, hoping that he stays alive. In no time, they find themselves surrounded by the orcs. Hans is badly wounded, but he is safe with the soldiers. Hyunsu has tried everything he can, but he can't seem to pierce the orc warrior. He realizes that the casualties will just continue increasing, and he immediately orders the soldiers to form a defensive position so that they can retreat to the forest behind them. He assures the soldiers that he is going to follow them afterward. Ben then reiterates the order for his comrades, telling them that they need to get the captain to safety so that they can regroup. The soldiers then run into the forest, but Ben stays back to tell Hyunsu that they will not be able to run very fast in the forest. Ben says the decision can only buy them a bit of time. Hyunsu figures out that all he needs is 5 minutes, and he asks Ben if he and the soldiers can hold out for 5 minutes. Ben assures Hyunsu that they can hold out for 5 minutes as requested. Hyunsu then takes the time to think about the orc's armor. He doesn't want to believe that it is too tough for arrows to pass through. Hyunsu then equips Dang's hammer, which turns out to be an epic item. The hammer practically reduces crafting time, and while Ben and the remaining soldiers are busy battling it out with the orcs, Hyunsu is cooking up something nice. Even though they are tired from fighting the orcs, Ben and his team are ready to hold out till Hyunsu is ready. Ben is bleeding all over, but he keeps pushing himself forward with the idea that they only have to wait 5 minutes. Just then, Ben finds himself in the presence of the orc warrior, and just as he is about to be killed, a powerful projectile comes flying toward the orc warrior. The projectile hits the orc warrior with enough force that it shatters his armor and cleanly passes through his body. Blood spills everywhere, leaving Ben confused. He turns around to see Hyunsu standing in the distance with a powerful signature aura swirling around him. Hyunsu aims another round of projectiles at the orc warrior, and this time around the projectile smashes his head, causing him to crash to the ground. Ben is utterly blown away when he sees this, and when he takes a closer look, he realizes that Hyunsu has equipped another item on his bow. Hyunsu has equipped an item called Swift Arrow, which provides 70% penetration and 60% arrow speed. It is basically an arrow that is short but flies faster than any other arrow, and it carries enough destructive power to shatter a stone. Hyunsu is able to use this thanks to the genius pipe he constructed using bamboo. Hyunsu doesn't stop with his attack, and when the soldiers realize that the orc warrior is back on his feet with the attempt to fight, the soldiers also get motivated to fight so that they can buy Hyunsu time. Hyunsu calmly aims his bow at the orcs with the confidence that the arrow's piercing power can be compared to that of a musket. He fires another round of the arrow, and this time around, he cuts through the orc warrior's neck, ultimately defeating it. Hyunsu finally gets the notification that he has defeated the orc warrior. Hyunsu then gets a ton of notifications about leveling up. Because he killed an orc warrior, he is given the title Orc Slayer, which increases his attack power against orcs by 15%. To make it sweeter, orcs will now fear his presence. The other orc warrior senses the terrifying power that just slain his friend and immediately drops his weapon to run away. However, Hyunsu is not about to let him get away, and he runs after him. Hyunsu intercepts him, and he looks absolutely menacing, like a devil, as he fires his deadly arrow at the scared orc warrior. The projectile completely takes off the orc's head, and with this, Hyunsu finds himself standing over a pile of orc bodies. He has completed his quest to subjugate the orc army, and in addition to this, his contribution rate hits 92%. The system basically tells him that he cleared the quest with astonishing results. A roar of victory emerges among the soldiers, and they start cheering for Hyunsu. The system informs him that the subjugation unit totally trusts his command. He is given a hidden piece as someone who leads the battlefield, and for this, he gets a special effect, which grants him 10 charisma points. Ben helps Hans up, and he carries him to where Hyunsu is. Hans thanks Hyunsu from the bottom of his heart because he never thought they would ever be able to defeat the orcs in his lifetime. Hans hits his chest with his severed arm as a sign of respect, and the other soldiers follow suit. Hyunsu also returns the gesture by placing his hand on his chest while thanking the soldiers. With this, Hyunsu completes his trial, and he heaves a sigh of relief before looking to the sunset as he prepares to finally return to the blacksmith's tower. However, the question of how he is going to return to the tower remains. Apparently, the Council of the Blacksmiths, headed by Deng, has been looking for a worthy blacksmith who will wield the powerful sword they have. They just can't give it to anyone since most blacksmiths now care about money rather than giving out perfection. However, they believed in the prophecy that a successor to the blacksmith god would appear to bring prosperity to the clan again. Deng now believes that he has found the right person, which is why he called together the other blacksmith lords to the central tower. Coulson, the tower lord of the bow blacksmiths, doesn't agree with Deng's decision to give the sword to an outsider. Deng then tells Coulson that Hyunsu has already passed the condition that they set for the sword to be given out. In addition to this, Hyunsu hasn't selected his profession, but he was able to lead soldiers, and with his blacksmith skills, he wiped out the orc warriors. When the other lords hear this, they become curious because they can't believe that someone without a class was able to carry out such a magnificent act. Deng points out that the prophecy said that the successor to the god of blacksmiths will be stronger than anyone, and Deng believes that the sword will provide the final answer that they are looking for. Just then, the butler informs Deng that Hyunsu has arrived at the hall, and Deng orders that they bring him in. Hyunsu pushes the door open, and Deng tells him that he has passed the test, which gives him the right to enter the blacksmith's sanctuary. In addition to this, he has also earned the right to challenge the sword of prophecy left behind by the god of blacksmiths. Deng lets him know that they are going to know everything the moment he grabs the sword, and after this, he is going to be given a great reward. Hyunsu wonders if the reward will be a legendary class since he recently completed an SS rank quest. Just then, one of the lords commends him for a job well done, telling him that he did well to have made the swift arrows in such a dire moment. However, he's not entirely pleased because he believes that the arrows are nothing but imitations. The lord believes that Hyunsu is lucky because he would never have passed if he hadn't had an epic bow from the start. Most of the lords don't believe in him, and they tell him to draw the sword so that they can finally see if he is a fraud or not. Hyunsu figures out that the dudes are masters of the blacksmith's tower, and they have each forged the legends of Ares. They are basically high-tier NPCs that possess titles and levels that are beyond impressive. To put it into perspective, Coulson is an impressive blacksmith who has reached level 365. Hyunsu admits that they are all impressive, but at the same time, he doesn't see himself as an inferior blacksmith to them. He wonders what will happen if they compete without the help of titles. Hyunsu approaches the sword, and it suddenly gives off an overwhelming aura, shocking everyone in the room. The sword ultimately turns into a blinding light and enters Hyunsu's body. Hyunsu doesn't know this, and he remains confused, wondering where the sword disappeared to. Deng already figured out what just happened, and he is pleased that his suspicions were all correct. Deng bursts into loud laughter, saying he finally understands what it means for the prophecy to be fulfilled. All they have been doing is creating rituals and procedures without doing the right thing. Coulson is pissed, and he doesn't want to accept the fact that Hyunsu might be the successor. Hyunsu soon gets the notification, congratulating him that he is the game's first god class. Coulson cannot believe that a trash foreigner has been granted the god class. Without holding anything back, the system immediately promotes Hyunsu to the god of blacksmiths. Hyunsu is a level 10 player, but he has attained the god of blacksmith class already, and to make it lovely, he is the first. Unlike the others, Deng is behind him, and he is excited that Hyunsu was able to pull it off. In addition to the class, he is given an SSS rank title, the God of Blacksmiths. The title allows him to break material level restrictions whenever he is crafting. Whenever he is also crafting artifacts, his mastery increases depending on the type of material. Basically, he is going to become stronger than anyone in a blacksmith class. The system then informs him that the sword trial will begin once he reaches level 100. While the other lords are already closing in on accepting the decision, Coulson screams out in anger, saying he is not ready to accept. He tells his comrades that they can't choose the god of blacksmiths just because the sword did so. Dane cuts in, telling the dude that the prophecy is absolute, but Coulson claims that whoever is acknowledged by all the Tower Lords will be the one to become the successor of the god of blacksmiths. Since this is also part of the prophecy, Coulson angrily uses the loophole to challenge Hyunsu to a blacksmith's duel. Coulson assures Hyunsu that he is going to accept him as the real deal if he manages to defeat him in the duel. However, Hyunsu will have no choice but to forfeit the title if he loses. Dang is ultimately concerned when he hears this, and he tells his colleagues that they need to restrain Coulson, but none of them moves an inch. Dang is surprised that his colleagues are not making a move to restrain Coulson. Coulson then tells Hyunsu that he is free to withdraw, and in return, he will grant him the position of Vice Tower Lord. Coulson is already smiling, believing that Hyunsu will back down, but unknown to him, Hyunsu was secretly wishing for it. Without hesitation, Hyunsu accepts the duel, since a blacksmith's duty speaks through their skill. The system then generates the quest of him going up against Coulson in a duel. Coulson then informs him that a blacksmith duel is different from that of a knight. He lets him know that the items that they pour their souls into making at the forge determine the winner. Apparently, they are going to strike the sword that they make against each other, and whichever sword breaks first loses. Coulson reveals that there is a high-grade smithy prepared inside the hall. Coulson believes that Hyunsu should be able to forge a sword in one day since he now has the blacksmith skill. Coulson laughs at Hyunsu, saying he will only be able to pull this off if he is truly the god of blacksmiths. With the challenge set, Coulson leaves, promising to see Hyunsu the next day. After Coulson is gone, Dang reveals his worry that Hyunsu accepted the duel without thinking twice. Dang explains that Coulson is an exceptionally skilled blacksmith, even among the Tower Masters. Dang says Hyunsu still needs the time to grow, even though he has acquired the god's skill. Hyunsu reveals that he would have been doomed to lose the duel if he hadn't changed his class. Hyunsu knows that Coulson must have acquired impressive and special abilities since he is a Tower Master. However, his decision to change to God class immediately took away the gap between them. Basically, the difference will now be determined purely by skill. This is because of the new skill he obtained. The new skill is called God's Custom-Made Creation. This is a skill that allows him to make any artifact that he wants. In addition to this, he can then imbue the artifact with whatever effect he wants. The higher the grade of the effect, the more difficult it is to craft. However, the effect value is granted at 100% depending on the crafting technique that is employed. Meanwhile, Coulson has also entered his smithy to work on his desired sword. He considers himself the chosen one since he inherited his blacksmithing skill from his father. However, he later met a master whose skills were greater than his own, and this is why he stopped forging swords and ultimately became the Tower Master of the Bow Blacksmiths. Coulson was resentful that he met someone greater than him, but he had no choice but to accept the reality of things. However, he can never accept the decision of bringing someone from an unknown origin to become lord over him. Fueled with rage and determination, Coulson pounds the steel he is working on with precision and power. At the same time, Hyunsu is also working on his sword. It is known that the process of imbuing artifacts with abilities and effects is based on the fundamental principle that gaining one thing means losing another. Dang figures out that Hyunsu will have to max out the strength of the sword to get a bit of an advantage in the duel. And to achieve this, tower gods usually craft at the highest possible grade. Dang is worried that Hyunsu might not be able to achieve this, since his strength and stats are merely at the rare grade level. However, Dang wonders what is going on inside Hyunsu's head as he crafts his sword. After a long night, the long-awaited hour for the duel finally hits. Coulson and Hyunsu are present in the hall, and the other Tower Lords are also present as witnesses. Coulson laughs at Hyunsu and says he has managed to cook up something overnight, which is why he didn't run away. Coulson smirks at Hyunsu, saying he would like to see if his skill matches one who is worthy of being the successor of a god. All while he is boasting, Hyunsu remains silent. Coulson then pulls out a beautiful sword from his sheath and introduces his sword as the Black Knight. It is a unique sword that boasts 12,000 points to its durability level. It also has a passive skill called the Weapon Breaker. Dang is not surprised when he sees this because Coulson's skills are not to be joked with. Dang is impressed that Coulson was able to create a flawless and unique grade dueling sword overnight. Coulson smiles evilly because he is pretty sure that his colleagues can see the perfection that he has managed to create. This is a sword that he has imbued with his family's tradition and secret techniques. After Hyunsu is tired of Coulson's brags, he finally pulls out his sword. Coulson almost loses his mind when Hyunsu is about to pull out his sword. Even Dang waits in anticipation for Hyunsu to pull out the sword. However, they are all hit with disappointment when they see the sword that Hyunsu made. The sword is nothing more than a rare grade sword that has just 1,000 points of durability. The other tower gods are also disappointed, and they have already made up their minds that Coulson was right after all. Coulson smiles evilly because he is confident that he is about to trash Hyunsu and put him in his place. Coulson makes the first move as he rushes toward Hyunsu so he can finish him off once and for all. Hyunsu merely maintains a defensive position to wait for Coulson's attack. Their swords finally clash with a powerful impact, and one of the swords gets cut off cleanly. The lords are stunned when they see that Coulson's sword was the one that broke. Coulson cannot believe his eyes as he looks at his broken sword lying on the ground. He is forced to ask Hyunsu how he was able to do it. Hyunsu then reveals that swords cannot be judged by their grade alone. It turns out that Hyunsu's sword has an active skill that prevents it from being broken unless the durability points reach 0. And with the single strike that they hit each other with, it only removed 100 points from the sword's durability. Upon hearing this, Coulson remembers when his father once told him that the god of blacksmiths will one day come, and he will be one who will reshape the way they think and see things. His father told him that everyone would be given the chance to meet him. Coulson was excited back then to meet the gods of blacksmiths because of his teachings. Hyunsu already knew that breaking Coulson's sword would not be enough to convince the Tower Masters. And this is why he made the decision to create a sword that cuts other swords. When he told Deng about his plan, Deng was skeptical. Hyunsu admits that it is not going to be an easy task, but creating such an artifact comes down to the blacksmith's skill and the sweat that he sheds. Deng finally realizes that Hyunsu is someone who makes bold choices that defy common logic. Coulson is completely broken, and he finally opens his mouth to acknowledge Hyunsu. He asks him if he will ever be able to make a sword that cuts other swords too. Hyunsu smiles as he tells Coulson that there is nothing called impossible. Coulson shed tears as he fell to his knees to greet and pledge his loyalty to Hyunsu. With this, Hyunsu clears the blacksmith duel quest. After the issue has been sorted, Hyunsu is treated like the important person that he is. The first thing they give him is 500 gold coins, which leaves him in high spirits. Alongside the 500 gold coins, they give him the scroll containing the legendary bow recipe. This is one of the 10 treasures of the blacksmith's tower. Coulson reveals that he was never able to complete the bow recipe, but he knows that it is the right thing for him to hand it over to someone who is on the path of becoming very powerful. Deng also assures Hyunsu that the lords will devote themselves to the new way of things with Hyunsu's arrival. Since they are all ready to support him, they urge him to stand at the pinnacle of power. After he logs out of the game, Hyunsu meets with his friend, who expresses his surprise that he is getting very good at the game. He believes that all of his suffering at the forge is finally getting paid off. Ji-hoon then asks him about the perks of being a god class. Hyunsu replies that it is not something noticeable from the start. Hyunsu then reveals that he has to go and pay his father's hospital bill the next day. Apparently, they have added another 10 million won to the medical bills. Ji-hoon then reveals that he has looked into the new medicine that Hyunsu wanted for his father. With what Ji-hoon has gathered, the medical cost is 20 million won, and it is also not covered by insurance. Ji-hoon then adds that Hyunsu's treatments will also cost a ton of money that his new god class might not even be able to cover. Basically, there is a limit to how many artifacts Hyunsu will be able to craft and sell due to his stamina. Ji-hoon then tells him that he has to level up and get more fame, which means his growth as a god is essentially important. Ji-hoon advises him to become friends with the most famous people in the game because this is the only way to get much better rewards and rare items of the same grade. Ji-hoon expects him to use this as a foundation to craft the best artifacts. To help with everything that he has counted, Ji-hoon assures him that he has a plan to assist him. On the game's group chat, the players talk about the player, named Lord, who recently got promoted to legendary class. The players are blown away when they hear this, and it turns out that Lord achieved this by defeating the Sword King, Barad. However, by defeating him, he only landed a hit, which is something no one has been able to do up until that very moment. This has the players wondering how he did it. The next day, Hyunsu realizes that he is still going to have a hard time paying his father's hospital bills because it is just too much. Even with the amount of money he has earned in the game, it is still not enough. Hyunsu is wondering how he can get money to pay his father's hospital bill when he gets the notification that his first custom-made sword has sold for 53,000 gold coins to the player lord. This came in at the right time as Hyunsu rushes into the hospital to tell the attendant that he is now ready to pay his father's hospital bills, which were due to run out that very day. Because of how clutch the money came in, Hyunsu realizes that Ares is his saving grace, and there is no chance for him to stop playing the game. Just then, Lord sends Hyunsu a message, saying he was able to pass Barad's test thanks to the sword. Lord believes that the 50 million won he paid for the sword is not a high price, considering how powerful it is. He was able to create an opening with the sword, and this surprised Barad himself. Lord then tells Hyunsu that Barad, the king of the Goyard kingdom, is waiting for him. Apparently, Barad wants Hyunsu to craft a sword for him. Hyunsu is shocked when he sees the message, and Lord makes it very important that he go see Barad. Hyunsu steps outside the hospital and he realizes that he finally has the power to solve all of his problems, which includes the new medicine treatment and his father's hospital bills. He just has to meet Barad and then find the lost forge too. Later on, Hyunsu tries reaching out to Barad, but he hits a brick wall. He is informed that he can't meet Barad yet because his level is low. Apparently, he has to increase his level and fame a bit higher if he wants to meet Barad. Hyunsu almost faints when he learns that he needs to be at least a level 200 player before he can meet Barad. Hyunsu then asks if there is any other way that he can get to see Barad. He is told that he can use the Goyard Martial Arts Tournament. This is a tournament that is held every year in the Goyard Kingdom, but only players who are level 50 to 60 are allowed to participate. Barad is always present because he is looking for warriors to scout. This is basically why he holds the tournament every year for outsiders. Jihoon tells Hyunsu that the tournament is about to be held, and the winner of the tournament receives their prize money directly from Barad. This makes it the only way for him to meet Barad with his current trash level. Later on, Dang tells Hyunsu to head to the Castle territory, which is at the border of Prime and Goyard, where war with the undead happens regularly. Dang believes that his skills are going to be needed. According to Dang, the territory is the fastest place if he wants to level up. With this in mind, Hyunsu starts heading to Cassel with the burning determination that he is going to clear the quest no matter how hard it is. Momentarily, he arrives at Castle territory, where he meets the level 26 warrior, Lander. Lander reveals that they have been waiting for reinforcements because the number of invading undead has increased. Hyunsu is surprised to hear this, and he asks if there is a particular reason why this is happening. Lander mentions that the invading undead army is always easy to take on whenever the holy bell of Ramus rings in the territory. They have been using this to keep the invading undead at bay until recently. After hearing this, Hyunsu realizes that it is a kind of event system. Apparently, the holy bell shattered into pieces, and because they have no idea what they are supposed to do, they have been asking for reinforcements to help their defenses. However, the undead army has started to notice that something is wrong, and they are gathering in large numbers. Hyunsu then asks Lander if the bell can be repaired. This is when it finally dawns on Lander that Hyunsu is from Dang. Hyunsu confirms this, saying he was sent by Dang, the blacksmith of the sword tower. When Lander realizes this, he gets more serious, and he reveals that they have been waiting for him. He urges him to follow him because they need to meet the commander. Moments later, they meet Commander Cal. Cal offers Hyunsu a proper greeting since he is from the Great Dang. When Cal hears Hyunsu's plan to repair the Bell of Ramus, he tells Hyunsu that the bell is basically unrepairable. Hyunsu is shocked to hear this, and Cal explains that they have tried to restore the bell countless times but have never succeeded once. Everyone who has tried has come to the same conclusion that the bell is an irreparable artifact. However, there is still one of them who is still in Castle, and they are looking for a way to repair it. Even though the said person is trying her best, Cal believes that it is nothing but a waste of time. Apparently, the smith is already at level 290, but they were not able to do it. Cal then asks Hyunsu about his level, and Hyunsu reveals that he is still on level 13. The commander and his subordinate are shocked when they hear this. Cal then humbly tells Hyunsu that it would be better for him to find someone of his level to help because the territory is on the brink of destruction, and they can't afford to waste a second. The commander is still telling Hyunsu how he needs to protect the territory when a soldier comes running over to tell him that the undead are invading the eastern wall. Basically, a horde of ghouls is swarming into the area. Cal immediately tells his people how essential it is that they defend the main gate. As Cal is about to leave, he calls Lander with him, and he tells Hyunsu that everything that he has told him so far is a secret that must not get out. Hyunsu assesses the situation and believes that he might be able to pull off the quest, the same way he did with the orcs. The quest officially opens, telling Hyunsu to defeat the invading ghouls and protect the castle gate. Just as the soldiers reported, the undead army has started climbing the walls in large numbers. Hyunsu joins the fight as he aims his bow at the invading undead army. Lander tells him that the undead soldiers are hard to kill without a weapon imbued with holy power, which is why they need to aim for the same spot multiple times to effectively end them. However, Hyunsu shows him just how effective he is when he takes down a ghoul's head with just a single shot to the head. Lander is shocked to see this since there is no holy power in the weapon that Hyunsu is using. Without holding back, Hyunsu continues firing his weapon at the annoying undead monsters. Hyunsu alone is able to deal so much damage to the undead army that it breaks down their formation. Hyunsu pushes them back, giving the soldiers breathing space. The soldiers waste no time as they start cheering for Hyunsu. Even Lander is excited, and he confidently tells the undead army that they are done for. Hyunsu heaves a sigh of relief because things are going much easier than he thought. Suddenly, things go south when a giant siege ghoul appears. The system gives him the new task of defeating the terrifying monster. With just a single step, the giant ghoul is able to wipe out a bunch of soldiers. The ghoul is so big that its height overshadows the castle walls. The soldiers start screaming in fear, and they conclude that Cal might be their only hope. However, this is no-go area because Cal is busy defending the gate and doesn't have the luxury of sparing any of his men. Lander sees this and realizes that the walls are going to be crushed. Just then, Hyunsu says he is going to draw the ghoul's attention. Lander is still asking how he plans to do this when Hyunsu leaps off the wall and charges toward the giant ghoul by himself. Lander tries to stop him, telling him that it is dangerous to go alone, but there is no stopping Hyunsu. He switches from his bow to his sword, and he jumps down the castle walls to find himself facing the giant ghoul. Since his mission is to defeat the giant ghoul, this is exactly what Hyunsu plans to do. Hyunsu dashes toward the giant ghoul, and this is enough to get its attention. The ghoul chases after Hyunsu, and it turns out that his plan to lead the ghoul away is working. However, Hyunsu finds himself in a tight spot, where he is trying hard to stay alive because the giant ghoul is pretty fast. Since the giant ghoul is pretty stubborn, Hyunsu swaps weapons again. Once the ghoul reaches him and stands directly above him, Hyunsu fires the bow with the confidence that the ghoul is done for. The arrow travels at a blinding speed and it hits the ghoul right on the head. The ghoul screams out loudly, but by the time the ghoul turns to look at Hyunsu, he realizes that his high-powered arrow was not able to do anything against the giant ghoul. The ghoul angrily kicks Hyunsu before he gets the chance to react. Just one kick from the ghoul ultimately drops his health points below 10%. As he is thrown to the ground, Hyunsu is informed by the system that he will be automatically logged out of the game once his HP hits 0%. Hyunsu is pissed off by this because he is not ready to go out in such a trashy manner. Hyunsu manages to get himself off the ground because he is not ready to suffer a forceful exit from the game. He knows that he is going to lose his chance to participate in the Goyard martial arts tournament if this happens. And if this happens, his father's hospital bills and his own treatment, and even his plan to take back the blacksmith shop, will all be impossible to achieve. Hyunsu is bravely determined to change his reality, which is why he started the game in the first place. And because of this, he can't afford to give up. Hyunsu grabs his bow and he fires another round of arrows into the ghoul's leg. This is enough to cause it severe pain, and it screams out loudly. The ghoul gets angrier as he starts moving toward Hyunsu. At the same time, Hyunsu's health points drop below 3%. But even with this, Hyunsu is not ready to give up. Hyunsu pulls his bow to the limit, and just when he is about to fire, the string snaps and it breaks. Hyunsu finds himself at the mercy of the ghoul. Before he can do anything, he is smashed by the ghoul's giant hand, and this drains his HP to 1%. Hyunsu suddenly finds himself in a weird space, and he starts wondering if he has finally reached the end. However, Hyunsu still doesn't want to give up. He raises his hand as if he is trying to reach for a ledge to help him up. Just then, the system informs him that he has met the special condition needed to acquire a new skill. Apparently, this happens when a god blacksmith's health points go below 5%, but they have a strong desire to fulfill. The new skill he got is the god's emergency crafting, which allows him to begin emergency crafting. The only condition is that he has to craft the weapon within 20 seconds. In addition to this, he can only use the weapon for 30 seconds. Hyunsu realizes that he finally got the chance he was praying for. Since he is looking for a way to clear the quest, he grabs the hammer and the materials he needs. While doing this, his 20 seconds are already running out. Hyunsu quickly gets to work, and he pounds the steel aggressively. Just before the time runs out, Hyunsu completes the crafting of his desired weapon. Hyunsu is transported back to the battleground, and he immediately swings his weapon at the giant ghoul. This delivers a powerful clean cut through the ghoul's body. Hyunsu lands on his knees after the powerful strike, and the ghoul crashes to the ground. Hyunsu's face lights up in hope and happiness when he realizes that he managed to do the impossible. The system informs him that he has defeated the ghoul, and because of this, he gained a ton of experience. However, he loses consciousness before he gets the chance to celebrate. Lander comes rushing toward him while calling his name frantically. The next morning, Hyunsu regains consciousness, and he asks the soldiers how much time has passed since he went out cold. He is also worried about the ghoul, but suddenly, he hears the soldiers screaming and cheering his name. They call him a hero, but Hyunsu remains confused until Cal shows up to tell him that they survived because of him. Cal wants to know how Hyunsu did it, but he finds it hard to explain it to him. He knows that no one would believe him even if he tries to explain it. What he did was to craft a weapon which has divine power in it while they were under attack. Cal then tells him that he has no reason to be modest because he deserves all the attention and love. Basically, ghouls are vulnerable to holy power just like ghosts. This is why Hyunsu forged the Four Seal sword, because it has the power to drive away evil spirits. This is all thanks to his father for telling him when he was younger. Hyunsu is glad everything worked out well. He also likes the skill that he used, but it is sad that it is just a one-time use. Cal then tells Hyunsu that it is time he takes his reward. Cal hands him the pouch of money, which turns out to be 2,000 gold. As usual, Hyunsu is blown away, and he happily accepts the reward. Cal then apologizes for the way he treated him. Hyunsu and the other soldiers are shocked when they see the commander bowing to Hyunsu. Hyunsu quickly tells the commander that there is no need for him to apologize. In return, Hyunsu thanks the man for acknowledging him. The two hold hands, and this brings the spectating soldiers to tears. Because of the interaction between the two, Cal's affinity also shoots up to the maximum level. Cal then makes a formal request of Hyunsu. He begs him to repair the Bell of Ramas. Because Cal felt divine power in the sword that Hyunsu used in defeating the ghoul, Cal is confident that Hyunsu can pull off the repair. Hyunsu lets Cal know that he would have loved to help, but he needs to get to the Goyard Kingdom as fast as possible. This is when Cal reveals something shocking, telling Hyunsu that the Lord has a legendary mineral. Cal lets him know that the Lord might be willing to give him the mineral if it helps fix the bell. This is enough to catch Hyunsu's interest, and Cal leads him to where the broken fragments of the bell are. Hyunsu is shocked when he realizes that the bell is completely shattered, not slightly broken or anything close to it. Cal smiles at him like a good puppy, asking Hyunsu if he will be able to fix the bell. Hyunsu nervously says yes, but deep down, he is worried about the restoration process. Just then, a lady appears behind them, telling Hyunsu that the bell cannot be repaired because even she, a level 290, could not pull it off. The lady stands in front of Hyunsu with a deadly stare, and she concludes that Hyunsu is nothing but a fraud. Earlier, a woman named Belle, the team leader, announced she was leaving the guild. The master of the Golden Shield Guild, Rune, asked her in shock why she was suddenly resigning and whether she didn't care about everything she had built so far. She replied that she was tired now. Rune tried to persuade her to stay, saying that if she could bring in the blacksmith Hyun this time, things would get better. But she angrily retorted that this was exactly the problem, asking him how they could offer 500 million a year to a random player. Rune argued that the blacksmith Hyun had sold his first crafted sword for 50 million won, and that, if they could recruit him, the guild would rise quickly. Belle reminded Rune that the blacksmith they had brought in before was just an external source, and the one who came after took the deposit and ran. She added that another blacksmith won the lottery and disappeared, and continued to list the failures. Belle asked him to stop, explaining how difficult it was to clean up all this mess, and insisted that he not try to stop her. Rune reluctantly agreed to her decision, but assured her that he would always keep a place for her if she decided to return. At the castle, Belle arrived to find the village in ruins and wondered in shock how a village like this could disappear. She thought that this was the place that had shown her the people here were not just non-player characters, but real people like her. Belle believed that if they could just fix Rama's bell, perhaps they could stop all this destruction. She decided she needed to go and check the bell again. When she reached the bell room, she was surprised to find Hyunsu there. She accused him of being a fraud. Hyunsu replied in confusion, asking who she was to say that. She answered that she was a blacksmith of a much higher rank than him. Captain Carl intervened and asked everyone not to fight. He introduced Belle as the advanced blacksmith he had mentioned earlier, and introduced Hyunsu as the person who had helped eliminate the ghouls. The captain cheerfully added that, on top of that, Hyunsu now said he would fix the bell. Belle wondered to herself how a level 38 player could help eliminate ghouls and now claim to fix the bell. Belle accused Hyunsu of trying to take advantage of the deteriorating situation in the castle region. Hyunsu, tired of her rant, asked her what she had been talking about since she arrived. He then ignored her and began to examine the bell fragments, wondering if they had changed in some way. A system window appeared confirming that Rama's bell was imbued with holy power, was completely destroyed, and that repair was impossible. Hyunsu concluded that there was no chance of repair through traditional methods. He then took a hammer and struck one of the fragments with force. Belle screamed in terror, telling him to stop. Hyunsu spoke calmly and explained that restoration was indeed possible. Belle angrily asked him if he didn't understand the meaning of unrepairable artifact. At that moment, a soldier rushed into the room shouting for the captain and told them that the undead were pouring in massive numbers. Everyone was shocked. A system window appeared, and Hyunsu initially thought it was a new quest, but he realized it was an update notification. The notification announced that the castle region update had begun and that after the update was complete, the updated region would be created. They realized the region was turning into a land of the undead. Belle believed this was the end, but Hyunsu corrected her, saying that if they made the bell, they could stop it. Belle described his words as impossible, but Hyunsu insisted it was possible. He then turned to Belle and asked her directly if she wasn't the one who wanted to protect it. Belle admitted that Hyunsu was right but wondered how to do it. Hyunsu asked her to follow him, adding the shards of Rama's bell to his inventory. Hyunsu enthusiastically declared that they would protect this place together. Captain Carl told Hyunsu that he was counting on him to repair the bell and that he would hold them off for as long as possible. Hyunsu told him to leave it to him. The captain raised his sword and shouted to his men not to lose hope, declaring that they would fight until the end. He urged them to hold on a little longer, insisting that they must protect Cassel. In the blacksmith's workshop, Bell asked Hyunsu what he was going to do. Hyunsu explained that when he shattered the shard earlier, the holy power had not disappeared, which meant the power was within the material itself. He planned to melt it down and forge a new bell, believing that if the bell was complete, the holy power would be stronger. Bell commented that she had never seen a skill like this before, and Hyunsu replied that a skill was not always needed to fix something. The smelting process began, and Bell wondered in amazement if he really intended to do this by hand in this day and age. Hyunsu asked her why she wasn't helping, explaining that he could not do it alone. Meanwhile, in the game developers' offices, the developer watched the countdown for the Cassel region update with less than an hour remaining. He declared in despair that they were in trouble and that the update was about to go to waste. A colleague asked him why he was grumbling on update day, and Kim Tae-suk told him to look at the screen. The colleague wondered if it was about that blacksmith player. He asserted that a player couldn't fix it, but their female colleague clarified that Hyunsu was no ordinary player. The fateful day of the Castle region update arrived, and the battle intensified. Carl shouted orders to stop the undead and prevent them from entering. They fought with all their might, panting from exhaustion. The soldiers suffered brutal attacks and one fell to a huge monster, but Carl intervened and killed the beast. Captain Carl rushed to check on him and shouted to his men to hold on a little longer. He urged them to protect Cassel, the place where they had been born and raised all their lives. In the midst of the fight, Captain Carl's sword began to crack. He wondered in despair why this was happening now. As his sword his shatters, the monster lunged at him, and the captain was completely surprised. He cursed the situation, believing that everything would end like this. Suddenly, a powerful ringing sound echoed across the battlefield. The undead clutched their heads and screamed in pain. They burst into flames and fell one by one as the mysterious sound of the bell continued to spread. The bell's echo resonated throughout the region, and the defending forces looked joyfully toward the source of the sound. Captain Carl exclaimed happily that Rama's bell had been repaired. In the developer offices, one of the developers spat out his drink in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Apparently, Hyunsu successfully created a new bell. In the office, a developer shouts, asking what is happening and whether the update has really failed. Kim Tae-suk explains that Hyunsu has not slept for a moment since the update countdown began a full week ago. It is revealed that 5 days earlier, Hyunsu went straight to the blacksmith's workshop in the Cassel region, gathered the city's workforce, and began repairing Rama's bell. He explained that they must melt everything down to its basic materials, or more accurately, extract the divine power from them. While Hyunsu was drawing the blueprints, he left Bell in charge of managing the workers and supplying the battlefield. After that, Hyunsu began the custom god crafting process. He planned to use his skill to maximize the bell's power against the undead and evil forces, and to add a skill that could inflict direct damage. With the shared will to protect the Cassel region, everyone worked toward a single goal. While the workers were determined to do whatever it took to protect their homeland, they believed this would imbue the bell with even greater divine power. On the final day, Bell wakes up suddenly, wondering when she fell asleep. She sees the completed bell in awe, and couldn't believe that Hyunsu worked on it for days without a break. A system window appears before her, announcing that her apprentice title is glowing. She has witnessed a crafting process performed by a master craftsman blacksmith, which increased her advanced blacksmithing mastery efficiency by 22%. She wonders in shock if this young man is truly a master craftsman. Hyunsu tells her that the noise must have been very loud, but she slept soundly. Bell protests, saying she wasn't unconscious for that long. Hyunsu reassures her that they are in the final stages and asks her to wait. Bell suddenly asks him if he is Hyun, the blacksmith. Hyunsu confirms his identity, then places his hand on the newly completed bell, which glows with immense power and is imprinted with his special symbol. Bell looks at the completed bell with admiration, saying that calling it beautiful doesn't do it justice. It is a magnificent masterpiece. A system window appears, explaining that this is Hyunsu's second custom creation in progress, unique with infinite durability. It is a reconstructed artifact that was once irreparable. Bell wonders if this is the reason for its power, admitting she has never seen anyone succeed at something like this before. Suddenly, Bell grabs Hyunsu's hands tightly and eagerly asks him to be with her from now on. Hyunsu asks her in confusion what she means, wondering if it's a love confession, which Bell denies in embarrassment. The scene returns to the decisive day of the battle, where Hyunsu strikes the newly completed bell. Waves of holy energy emanate from it, annihilating the hordes of undead who scream in agony as they burn. The soldiers gasp as they watch the horrific scene. A system message confirms that Hyunsu has created a new bell and eradicated the undead, and that he can now prevent the update and create a new story. Hyunsu shouts triumphantly that they did it, thanking God he wasn't too late, but he immediately collapses, overcome by a state of extreme exhaustion that leaves him stunned. Bell rushes to him, anxiously asking if he is okay, while a system message announces the completion of the Repair Rama's Bell quest. Another message indicates that the rewards have been changed. Meanwhile, the news spreads quickly throughout the Aries player community. Someone asks if others know the Blacksmith Hyun and posts a topic titled, "The Reason the Kassel Region Update Failed," along with pictures of the tower before and after the bell's repair. Players recognize the name Hyun from Hyunsu's first custom sword and are stunned that he repaired Rama's bell. As a result, huge numbers of players start following Hyunsu's workshop. Hyunsu wakes up in his bed to the sound of continuous notifications, wondering about all the noise. He sees that his workshop's follower count has jumped to 100K and is amazed, wondering how this is possible. Hyunsu smiles, realizing it was a good thing he engraved his name, Hyun, on the bell, as now everyone who visits the Kassel region will see it. Someone knocks on the door and asks for permission to enter. Captain Carl enters enthusiastically, announcing that their region's savior has awakened. He tells Hyunsu that he has come with the Lord's approval to give him his reward for making the bell, 330,000 gold pieces. Hyunsu is stunned by the amount, which is equivalent to 330 million won. The captain adds that the savior deserves a reward of this caliber and presents him with a box as a gift from the Lord himself. Hyunsu opens it to find the legendary mineral orichalcum. Hyunsu thanks the captain. Captain Carl insists that they are the ones who should be thanking him, explaining that, unlike other outsiders, Hyunsu did not abandon their region and instead protected them. The captain expresses his sincere gratitude. Hyunsu feels the captain's sincerity and thinks that he only did what had to be done, realizing that the despair of the people in Aries is no different from the despair in reality. Hyunsu then takes his leave of the captain, explaining that he needs to return to where he used to live for a while, and the captain immediately agrees. Hyunsu decides it's time to reclaim his workshop and logs out of the game. The captain and his colleague look at the spot where Hyunsu disappeared, commenting that outsiders are a strange group. The next day in Gongju, Hyunsu meets with the real estate investor Kang Hyuk-soo. Kang looks at his phone, which displays a message stating that Mr. Hyunsu has deposited 330 million won. Kang tells Hyunsu that he really did it and is really impressed. A year ago, Hyunsu sits with Kang, who is reviewing the property papers. Kang tells him that the total amount comes to 330 million. Kang mentions that he heard about the big fire and reassures Hyunsu that the amount should be more than enough for the hospital bills, urging him to keep his head up. As Kang prepares to leave, Hyunsu asks in a hesitant voice if he could buy back the workshop. Kang asks for clarification on what Hyunsu just said. Hyunsu repeats his question, explaining that if he could somehow raise the money, would Kang sell the workshop back to him? Kang advises him that buying a burned-down workshop would just be a waste of money, and that he would be better off buying a new one if he needed it. Hyunsu insists that it must be their workshop, as the place is filled with memories of his father. Kang thinks it over and then decides to grant Hyunsu a grace period of exactly 1 year. However, he warns him that the second the year is up, he will sell the property to the first buyer. Hyunsu thanks him warmly, while Kang tells him he will be waiting for his call. Back in the present, Hyunsu admits that although he was the one who made the offer, in his heart he knew he was asking for the impossible. Hyunsu explains that the 1-year period was just a rough estimate, and that the opportunity to sell such a property could have ended at any time, but Kang had already kept his promise. Hyunsu asks why Kang was so kind to him. Kang replies that he was the first person ever to ask to buy back a property after selling it. He adds that he just wanted to encourage someone like him. Hyunsu thanks Kang again, and thinks to himself that thanks to him, he didn't have to give up the workshop and that he needs to give him something in return. Hyunsu asks him if he is familiar with a game called Aries. Kang laughs and replies that of course he knows it. Who hasn't heard of it these days? Hyunsu reveals that he is actually a blacksmith in Aries. Kang comments that this is the perfect job for him. Hyunsu offers to make him an artifact as a gift. Kang excitedly asks if he can make him a custom piece regardless of the effect type or level. Hyunsu smiles and replies, "Of course," promising that he will make him anything he wants. Hyunsu enters a tavern where Belle calls him over to sit with her. This is the first time they have seen each other since the undead incident. Belle complains about how hard it was to find him, and Hyunsu apologizes, but she says she was just kidding. Belle properly introduces herself, explaining that she was the chief strategist for the Golden Shield Guild and the one who built the guild into what it is today. She adds that on that day she became certain of one thing, that Hyunsu would one day become one of the top-ranking players. Therefore, Belle gets straight to the point. She tells him that when he eventually creates a guild, she wants to be its first member. Hyunsu jokingly reminds her that she was calling him a scammer. Belle immediately apologizes but justifies her stance by saying anyone would have misunderstood in that situation. Hyunsu tells her he was just kidding and that he is also looking forward to working with her, and they shake hands. But before that, Hyunsu decides to tell her his plans. Belle is shocked to learn that Hyunsu is going to meet the Sword King Barad, one of the 10 legends. Hyunsu confirms that he will enter the Joyard martial arts tournament and wonders if the winner will receive their prize from Barad himself. Belle confirms this but is worried, explaining that this tournament is a gathering of rising stars from all over, and it's no joke. Hyunsu simply replies that this is exactly why he must win. Belle wonders how he can say that so simply, and if he can even taste his food. Hyunsu reassures her not to worry and tells her that he will aim for the top using his specialty, leaving her puzzled. The day of the Joyard martial arts tournament arrives. The tournament's head, Beckel, welcomes the outsiders. He announces that the tournament will begin the moment he steps off the stage and that they will all face monsters shortly. He adds that although they may not be able to see him, His Majesty King Barad is watching them, so they must be on their best behavior. He wishes them luck, and a system window announces the start of the tournament. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake. Apparently, a massive golem appears, and the system announces that the first mission is to survive the golem's attack with a 1-hour time limit. The participants rush into battle enthusiastically, with one expecting a golem to be the first opponent. A system window announces the first trial of the tournament. Whoever kills the stone golem, level 109, will receive a reward. A participant is surprised by the golem's high level, wondering if it was always this high and noting that the first round is supposed to be easy. Another participant recklessly charges, declaring, "First come, first served," but is immediately crushed by the golem, resulting in a forced logout. The other participants scream in terror and try to dodge the attacks, but they fall one by one and are logged out as well. The participants realize this situation is completely different from the information they had and wonder how they are supposed to defeat this thing. Hyunsu stands observing the situation, while the other players curse their bad luck, realizing they've been deceived. Elsewhere, the tournament head, Beckel, realizes the tournament has turned into a complete disaster. A stone golem from the high-level tournament has been mixed in by mistake. Beckel fears that at this rate, all tournament participants will be eliminated and decides he must see His Majesty immediately. Beckel rushes into the king's chamber, calling for King Barad, and insists they must stop the tournament now. But King Barad calmly rejects his request. This makes Beckel confused. The king asks if he still doesn't understand the situation. The king tells him to look closely at that warrior. In the arena, Hyunsu fires a glowing arrow that hits the stone golem. It is revealed that this is Hyunsu's third custom creation, the Orichalcum Fletching Arrow, a special arrow with the ability to return to the user after being fired. The other players are amazed, wondering how an arrow can return like a boomerang. Hyunsu thinks that this arrow is the reward he received from the Cassel region, and that it's incredible that it's made of the legendary Orichalcum, performing as well as expected. Hyunsu fires the arrow again, hitting the golem. As it returns, the arrow nearly strikes another player, who yells at Hyunsu to be careful unless he's trying to kill him. Hyunsu immediately apologizes. As a result of the hit, the stone golem is stunned for 4 seconds. The players shout that the golem is stunned and that this is their chance to attack. They launch an all-out assault, but the golem recovers and retaliates with an AoE attack, sending them flying. The golem then locks onto Hyunsu and charges at him. Bro is definitely cooked. One player shouts that they just need to hold on a little longer and it will be over, and another yells at Hyunsu to run. The players take the brunt of the attacks and struggle to stay alive. At the last moment, Hyunsu switches his weapon to his daylight sword, declaring that it's not over yet. He blocks the golem's massive blow, but the force of the impact throws him to the ground. Back in the castle, Beckel pleads with King Barad, saying they must stop the tournament now and pointing out that the participant seems to have reached his limit. The king watches with interest, and suddenly something unexpected happens that catches his attention. In the arena, despite having fallen, Hyunsu uses the emergency god crafting skill again. The crafting process is complete, resulting in the Damascus Waldo, a weapon specifically designed to cleave through stone. With a single powerful strike, Hyunsu successfully defeats the stone golem. The Damascus Waldo disappears, as it was an emergency creation, while Hyunsu receives a flood of level-up notifications. Hyunsu is amazed to realize his level has increased by 14. The other players look at him in disbelief, wondering how he managed to defeat it. Hyunsu asks them in confusion if they weren't supposed to defeat it. The players reply that the mission was to survive, so how could they possibly defeat a monster with such a huge level gap? They explain that the trial consists of 3 stages, and the appearance of this golem had already disrupted the balance. It wasn't there to be defeated. Hyunsu now understands the situation. Suddenly, he feels extremely dizzy and loses consciousness. The other players gather around him, wondering if he has fainted, and notice that he hasn't been logged out. They begin discussing how many weapons he used, at first thinking he was multi-skilled, but now realizing he is a weapon master. They wish they had just one of his amazing weapons. At that moment, Beckel announces to all participants that due to an error on the organizer's part, the martial arts tournament will be suspended and orders everyone to leave. News of Hyunsu's achievement spreads rapidly online, with thousands watching a live stream of him unconscious in the arena. Viewers wonder how he managed to defeat the stone golem alone and ask for information about his bow and arrow. Someone notices that Hyunsu has dropped his arrow, and upon zooming in, they see the name Hyun engraved on it. The viewers immediately connect him to the Hyun who created the unrepairable bell in the Cassel region. They are stunned, marveling at how a blacksmith could be so powerful and at the superiority of his equipment. In the offices of the Beholder Company, the customer service team faces a flood of inquiries about why the tournament was suspended. The staff cannot provide clear answers, merely stating that it was a decision made by Ares' free will or that it relates to an internal issue in the Kingdom of Joyard, apologizing to the customers repeatedly. In the development department, a colleague tells her team leader that there is a big problem. He replies that he is busy. She informs him that the Joyard martial arts tournament has been suspended, and he answers nonchalantly that they knew this would happen. The colleague shouts that it was not the problem. The problem was that King Barad had summoned the user Hyunsu. The team leader is shocked, wondering how they could meet so quickly when the tournament arrangements still require time. The colleague confirms that Hyunsu is already on his way to the reception hall. The team leader realizes he is in trouble and that he will be working all night again. He comments that this user defies all logic and that his actions are unpredictable. He wonders what will happen if Hyunsu succeeds in Barad's request and their affinity reaches its maximum. He concludes that in that case, Hyunsu will master the art of the Sword King's swordsmanship and become the strongest blacksmith ever. The developer team leader adds that it won't be easy, as the decision rests on Barad's free will. His colleague expresses a feeling that Hyunsu will succeed, which worries the team leader, who asks her not to say such ominous things. The next day in the game, Hyunsu is escorted to the throne room, thinking that he will meet Barad sooner than expected. Hyunsu kneels before King Barad, who addresses him as stranger. Barad explains that normally the prize would have been presented in front of everyone, but he asks for his understanding in simplifying matters due to the unexpected incident. He adds that everyone will acknowledge his remarkable performance as a weapon master yesterday. The king offers Hyunsu a monetary prize of 13,000 gold pieces, but Hyunsu suddenly stands and interrupts the king, saying he heard that he's looking for him. The king's guards are enraged by his insolence, believing that such arrogance cannot be tolerated, no matter how rare the warrior, and wonder how he dares to speak while his majesty has not finished. Hyunsu calmly replies, announcing that he is Hyun the blacksmith. This makes the guards angry, and they prepare to remove him immediately. But King Barad orders them to stop, confirming that Hyunsu is the guest he has been waiting for. Hyunsu formally greets his majesty, King Barad. Barad, one of Ares' 10 legends, tells him that he has taken his time. Hyunsu replies that the road here was rough. Barad asks if he knows why he was summoned. Hyunsu guesses that it is to commission him to forge a sword, which the king confirms. Barad explains that even the best blacksmith in the kingdom, and even Day, the master of the sword tower, have failed at this task. For this reason, he wants to know what makes Hyunsu trustworthy. Under immense pressure, Hyunsu replies that he has only one thing. He has come all this way believing in nothing but his own skill. King Barad laughs loudly. Impressed by the stranger's boldness, the king decides to bet on Hyunsu's confidence and orders his men to bring what he has prepared. A glowing chest is presented before Hyunsu. The chest contains 100-year-old cold iron, a special ore that has absorbed cold for 100 years and possesses fire resistance and ice properties. Hyunsu looks at the metal in amazement, thinking it seems like something straight out of a martial arts novel. Barad specifies his request. He wants a sword of epic grade or higher that emanates frost. He promises that if he is satisfied, he will grant Hyunsu anything he desires. But he warns him that if he is disappointed, Hyunsu will never set foot in the kingdom of Joyard again. A quest window appears, titled The King's Commission, which requires the king's acknowledgement. The reward is the fulfillment of one request from Barad, and the penalty for failure is expulsion from the kingdom of Joyard. Hyunsu accepts the quest, promising that he will not disappoint the king and that he will surely succeed. Later in the blacksmith's workshop, Hyunsu feels his neck burn from the intensity of the gaze directed at him. He turns to see a woman watching him. It is Bella, the vice captain of the Knights of the Kingdom of Joyard, and her level is 301. Hyunsu thinks to himself that even though he is a stranger, placing a guard on him so blatantly feels excessive, but he retracts the thought, considering it natural that they would not trust him easily. Bella tells him to pretend she is not there and to focus on his work. Hyunsu asks her with a sarcastic smile if his staring is that obvious, and she replies yes. Bella thinks to herself, wondering who this young man thinks he is. She remembers that His Highness has pinned his last chance on him and vows that he had better not fail. Hyunsu feels the immense pressure she is putting on him. Suddenly, a doorbell rings in the game, puzzling Hyunsu. He apologizes to Bella, explaining that something must have happened in his real world, and asks if she minds if he steps out for a moment. Hyunsu wakes up in his capsule in the real world and goes to open the door. He is surprised to see the landlady. Hyunsu asks her the reason for her visit. The lady tells him that she has decided to sell the house, explaining that her husband has recently become unemployed and they need to sort things out. She apologizes to him. Hyunsu tells her not to apologize, feeling that he is the one who should be sorry for renting the place for cheaper than the market rate and for being late with the rent several times. He asks her when he needs to leave, and she tells him that she will need him to vacate within 2 weeks. The lady feels ashamed before him, but he asks her not to say that, assuring her that he has lived well here and bowing to her respectfully. After she leaves, Hyunsu repeats the deadline to himself. 2 weeks. Hyunsu feels exhausted. He thinks that although he earned a good amount of money in Aries, his father's hospital bills cost tens of millions, and buying back the burnt workshop cost him 330 million. Moreover, he hasn't even started his own burn treatments. He wonders in despair where he is supposed to go now. At that moment, his phone rings. The caller is Kim Hyo-won. When he answers, Belle asks him what he is doing and tells him she has a good idea about the quest, which is why she called. Hyunsu asks her to call him back later, explaining that his head is a bit preoccupied right now. Belle asks if something is wrong. Hyunsu tells her that Barad's quest is important, but he suddenly has to move out of his house in 2 weeks. Belle angrily reminds him how important this quest is. She tells him that she expects 2 main outcomes from it. Belle explains that right now people are arguing about whether the champion of the Joyard martial arts tournament and the blacksmith Hyun are the same person. She suggests he not clarify it yet, because when he reveals his path later, it will cause an uproar. She adds that he received a commission to forge a sword from Barad, one of the most influential NPCs in Aries. She asks him to just imagine Barad revealing a new sword engraved with the name Hyun. That, she says, is the moment his value will skyrocket, which is why she said she would stand by him. Hyunsu thanks her, saying she has brought him back to his senses and promises he will do his best. Hyunsu returns to the game to find Bella shouting at him angrily. Bella yells at Hyunsu, asking why he is only now returning, and he asks in confusion what happened. Bella tells him that His Royal Highness Barad has been trapped in the dragon's nest. Hyunsu asks in shock where King Barad is trapped. Hyunsu asked for the exact location of the dragon's nest. Bella, incredulous, questioned how he could be surprised when he didn't even know where it was. Hyunsu replied that he thought he should at least act surprised. Time pressing, Bella began to explain. She clarified that the dragon's nest referred generally to the fire-type monster region. Among those areas, the Ifrit dungeon stood out, a place from which no one had ever returned alive save for His Majesty, King Barad. Hyunsu questioned why the king would enter a dungeon he had already visited, especially without the weapon he had commissioned. Bella explained that His Majesty's target of revenge was within that dungeon. The words target of revenge caught Hyunsu off guard. At that moment, the scene shifted to the flame nest. King Barad stood before the blazing dungeon gate, wounded and weary. He understood that crossing the threshold would trigger the beginning of everything. Even his current sword, he believed, would not be enough. Relieved that his men had escaped safely, Barad reflected on the 3 days it would take for reinforcements to arrive. A bitter smile formed as he admitted to himself that perhaps he should have waited for the stranger to complete the sword. A memory surfaced, one steeped in grief. He remembered his son, Ban, who would have been about the same age as Hyunsu. The memory of Ban's final moments replayed in painful clarity. Ban had died in his arms, calling out for his father. Barad had demanded to know why Ban had come without telling him. Ban had explained that he believed conquering the dungeon would make him a son his father could finally be proud of. Yet, realizing too late that he was not strong enough, he had apologized. Barad had pleaded with him to hold on, to cling to life. But Ban had apologized once more before breathing his last breath. Still haunted by that moment, Barad now recognized that he should have waited for the sword, but letting Ifrit escape was unthinkable. He had waited years for this opportunity. Steeling himself, he stepped forward into the blazing gate. Back in the workshop, Bella continued her explanation. Since the prince's death, His Majesty had tried every means to hunt down Ifrit, but the monster had evaded capture until now. This, she said, might be the king's final chance. Though she admitted struggling to place her trust in a stranger like Hyunsu, she acknowledged that there must be a reason His Majesty had entrusted him with the task. Lowering herself, Bella bowed as a knight of the kingdom of Joyard and begged Hyunsu to save the king. An emergency quest appeared, a sword that can save the king. The objective was to forge a blade capable of rescuing King Barad. The reward was an increase in Bella's trust. The penalty was Barad's death. Hyunsu reflected on the king's loss. He remembered the day when he too had almost lost everything to flames. A question echoed within him. If his family had died that day, could he have moved forward as Barad had? With resolve, he pledged to do everything he could. Returning to the forge, Hyunsu began to work intensely. Sparks flew as he hammered the cold iron, then plunged it into water. He recalled that Ifrit's heat could melt even unique-grade weapons. To stand a chance, the new weapon would need to surpass that tier. His focus shifted to the unsolvable effect of the frozen stone. As his concentration deepened, a system window appeared, indicating his understanding of the 100-year-old cold iron had evolved. Another notification followed. The spirit of the blacksmith had been activated. According to the system, Hyunsu had immersed himself in the work more than anyone else. Passion, determination, and empathy had drawn him into a state of absolute focus. The announcement declared the forging of Hyunsu's first legendary grade sword. From the workshop, a brilliant light burst outward. Bella, sensing the intensity, wondered if the sword was complete. Hyunsu stood with the newly forged blade glowing in his hand. With steady determination, he declared that it was time to save His Majesty, King Barad. In the flame nest, Barad cried out in pain, collapsing under a powerful strike. Though wounded, he rose to his knees, refusing to surrender. Before him stood the leader of the flame nest, Ifrit, level 409. Immediately, King Barad leaps forward, waited long enough for this moment. King Barad then charges his sword with an aura and successfully lands a slash. However, it seems it doesn't have an effect as Ifrit only regenerates its body. Ifrit then turns around and tries to sneak attack from the ground, but fortunately, King Barad jumps away in time. As he was running away, Ifrit's fire began to engulf King Barad's sword and turned into a tornado attack, melting his only sword. Ifrit then charges an attack and attacks King Barad multiple times, but he easily avoided this all. This enrages Ifrit and unleashes a wide flame attack that traps King Barad in the flame. Unable to stand up, he cursed at himself. Ifrit raised his weapon for the finishing strike, hurling a flaming spear toward King Barad. At that moment, a massive icy sword appeared out of nowhere, intercepting the attack. Hyunsu and Bella had arrived just in time. Bella shouted to Barad, urging him to use the new sword. The king grasped the glowing blade that had been thrown before him. A system window appeared, displaying the sword's details. It was Hyunsu's custom creation equipped with astonishing powers, plus 343% fire resistance, plus 194% ice attack power, and an extraordinary plus 397% increase in ice attack power against fire monsters. The weapon also possessed an active skill known as Frost Blossom. Hyunsu called for the king to use it. Barad gripped the sword tightly as icy power surged through it. He activated the Frost Blossom skill, sending a mighty wave of frost sweeping across the battlefield. The frozen surge countered the fiery onslaught, and Ifrit screamed in agony as the cold devoured his flames. Declaring that the battle was finished, Barad lunged forward and delivered a finishing blow that was so powerful it cut Ifrit's body in half. The system announced that the boss monster had been defeated. Relief washed over Barad. For a fleeting moment, he believed victory had been achieved. But suddenly, Ifrit's body glowed ominously, swelling with destructive energy. Hyunsu wondered aloud what was happening. Bella recognized the danger and realized that some monsters self-destructed at death. In an instant, the entire dungeon was engulfed in massive flames. Bella screamed for him to escape, warning of the danger, but the king ordered her to stay back. Calling it a royal command, he accepted his fate. Looking down at the locket that held his son's picture, he thought to himself that it was time to end everything. Bella's heart sank in despair. She knew she had to save her king, yet his command bound her. Conflicted, she stood frozen in place. Hyunsu stepped forward. He declared that he would go in her stead. Using emergency god crafting, he forged a flame-resistant shield and pushed into the flames. While walking, he called out to King Barad. The King Barad demanded that he leave, claiming he had already done more than enough. Hyunsu refused, insisting that he had come to accompany him and would not leave him behind. Hyunsu's eyes fell on the locket. He asked if the king's decision was because of the one within it. Barad admitted the truth. Because of him, his son had perished, and he could not bear to live with such shame. Hyunsu asked if he truly believed his son would want this. This makes King Barad angry, and he grabs Hyunsu by the collar, shouting that he dared not speak of such things. The grief of losing a child, Barad cried, could never be understood by anyone. Hyunsu conceded that he could never know such pain, but he confessed that he too had faced despair. His father lay in a coma, and each day he had prayed for him to awaken. Though those prayers had not been answered, he had found peace simply in the fact that his father was alive. With quiet resolve, Hyunsu told Barad that surely his son would have wanted the same. Tears filled Barad's eyes as Hyunsu urged him to let his son rest in peace. In his vision, he saw Ban smiling. Choked with emotion, Barad apologized again and again, admitting his own foolishness. Hyunsu whispered that he must continue to live, that he should strive to be the kind of father his son could be proud of. At last, Barad nodded. He agreed, saying he must not remain a shameful father. As Hyunsu carried King Barad, they successfully emerged from the flames. Bella rushed toward them, crying out in relief and asking if His Majesty was safe. Hyunsu reassured her that Barad was fine, then added that he would be gone for a while. A system message appeared, announcing that his health points had reached 0 and that he would be forcibly logged out. Before vanishing, he comforted her with the reminder that strangers did not die, and completely logs out. Bella stood frozen in shock as Barad collapsed into her arms, whispering that the boy had saved him. She shouted his name, urging him to remain conscious, but Barad drifted into unconsciousness, a faint smile lingering on his face. Hyunsu awoke in the real world. A system notification informed him that due to the forced logout penalty, his level had decreased by 1. 3 days later, Barad is still unconscious and dreaming of his son, Ban. He sees Ban standing on a hill and immediately runs toward him, overwhelmed with joy at the sight. Ban gently says he only came to say his final goodbye. Hearing those words, Barad freezes in disbelief before breaking down into tears. Ban tells him to listen to Hyunsu and says he truly wishes for his father to live happily from now on. As he slowly fades into thin air, Ban pleads with him one last time to live his own life. Barad desperately screams his son's name until Ban disappears completely. Even in reality, Barad, still unconscious, continues crying while calling out for Ban, as if trying to hold on to the dream. He wakes up abruptly, gasping, and his attendants rush in immediately to check on him. Barad tells them about Ban visiting him and saying goodbye in the dream. Despite the sadness, Barad feels grateful to Hyunsu for helping him finally let go of the grief that had chained him for years. Feeling lighter, he decides he must see Hyunsu right away. Soon after, Hyunsu's arrival is announced, and he steps in, respectfully greeting Barad. Curious and concerned, Hyunsu asks about Barad's condition, and Barad reassures him that he is doing much better. He invites Hyunsu to sit, saying there is something he has always wondered about. Barad wants to know how outsiders feel just before they die, even though he knows they are immortal and revive afterward. He believes that despite resurrection being guaranteed, death must still be frightening for them. Barad asks because he wants to understand why Hyunsu went against all odds just to save him. Hyunsu explains that he had 2 reasons. First, because Barad carries a burden in his heart just like he does, and Hyunsu wanted him to keep living despite that weight. After hesitating about the second reason, Hyunsu lets out a small, awkward laugh and admits he was also motivated because he believed that Barad would certainly give him a generous reward. Barad is deeply touched by the first answer, and finds the second one surprisingly amusing. He tells Hyunsu that he truly intended to give him a generous reward. Barad then hands him a scroll, containing over 1,000,000 gold. Hyunsu is stunned into silence by the enormous gift. Barad explains that the sword saved his life, so the reward must be just as significant. Hyunsu quickly bows deeply, thanking Barad for the reward, but Barad waves him off and urges him to sit. He happily promises that he will live his life to the fullest until he meets Ban again in the afterlife. Barad also hopes that Hyunsu can live with vigor until his father awakens. He pleads with Hyunsu to visit from time to time because he is curious about how Hyunsu's story will unfold. Hyunsu agrees to visit, promising to come and exchange stories with the king. To his further surprise, Barad stretches out his hand to shake him, offering to be his friend. Still in awe, Hyunsu happily accepts the handshake, amazed that he can truly be friends with a legendary figure. To commemorate their newfound friendship, Barad announces that he wants to pass his swordsmanship to Hyunsu. Benson, a knight commander of the Goyard Kingdom, immediately protests, reminding Barad that his successor, Road, has already been appointed and trained in Barad's swordsmanship art. Benson argues that Hyunsu might not be qualified to receive such a legacy. Barad immediately shuts him down firmly, declaring that he passes his swordsmanship only to those he deems truly qualified. As Barad turns to face him, Hyunsu receives a new quest notification from the system. He is to learn Barad's swordsmanship, and the penalty for failure is a decrease in affinity with Barad. The quest description specifies that to qualify, Hyunsu must successfully land 3 hits on Benson. Barad then informs Hyunsu that Benson will be in charge of his qualification trial. After receiving 2 days off from Barad, Hyunsu logged out of Aries and using his game rewards, he first settled his father's hospital bills. Then he signed a contract and paid for a new apartment. After getting his new apartment, he gave a gift to thank his previous landlady for always overlooking his overdue rent. With all that taken care of, Hyunsu called his friend Ji-hun and invited him out for a meal. Ji-hun assumed it would be the usual cheap beer at a convenience store, but to his surprise, Hyunsu took him to a barbecue spot and ordered some premium beef. As Ji-hun shovels food into his mouth, he can't believe Hyunsu actually bought him such expensive beef. Hyunsu explains that Ji-hun has helped him countless times, and he just wanted to do something in return. Hearing him get all mushy, Jihoon is creeped out a bit because Hyunsu has never been one to express his feelings like that. To Jihoon's further surprise, Hyunsu hands him an elegant gift package. When Jihoon unwraps it, he is shocked to find a pair of designer shoes inside. Overjoyed, he asks how Hyunsu could afford such luxuries and drools over it, still struggling to believe the gift is for him. Hyunsu also lets him know that he has sent him back the money for the game capsule. Jihoon is stunned by that too, but the shoes remain the most exciting part. He thanks Hyunsu for the shoes as he continues to drool over them. Hyunsu also thanks Jihoon for helping him change his fate, but Jihoon is still not over his designer shoes, pretends not to hear him, prompting Hyunsu to playfully shove a piece of beef into his mouth. After completing all his tasks in the real world, Hyunsu logs back into the game and returns to the Goyard Kingdom for his qualification trial with Benson. Barad presides over the duel, while Bella acts as the referee. Benson draws his sword and urges Hyunsu to do the same, warning that he won't go easy on him for Barad's sake. Hyunsu replies that he feels the same, but to Benson's surprise, he dips his hand into a pouch and pulls out a large stone. Hyunsu casually holds the stone in one hand, smiling as he looks forward to the qualification duel. Hyunsu then tosses the stone into the sky, and as it glows with a blinding light, a sword materializes. Benson stares for a moment, confused, but his initial surprise soon turns to disappointment. He had expected something spectacular from all the drama, yet it was just a seemingly ordinary sword. He looks down on Hyunsu's weapon and scoffs, calling him foolish before preparing to strike. Benson believes that there is no way Hyunsu can defeat him with such a measly blade. Still boasting, he confidently charges forward, swinging with full force. Hyunsu manages to block the attack with his sword, but it starts caving under the pressure of Benson's power. Benson, feeling smug, asks what Hyunsu was expecting to achieve with such a useless sword. After a while of struggling, Hyunsu's sword shatters, but to Benson's shock, the shards from the sword scatter all over, hitting him in several places. After the dust dies down, Hyunsu proudly announces that he has completed his mission of successfully landing 3 hits on Benson. From the system's notifications, Hyunsu announces that the number of successful hits is 59 in total. As Hyunsu continues to explain his strategy, Benson looks at him, confused and speechless. He never imagined that the boy would use such a clever method to outsmart him. Despite his astonishment, Benson is impressed and asks about Hyunsu's identity. With pride, Hyunsu brandishes Dang's hammer and declares that he is the god of blacksmiths. Benson is completely shocked and immediately bows in deep respect to Hyunsu. He pleads with Hyunsu to spread the king's swordsmanship throughout the world. Hyunsu is stunned and feels the weight of such a request pressing on him. After successfully qualifying to learn Barad's sword art, Hyunsu undergoes 2 weeks of intense training under Barad's guidance. At the end of the period, he masters the Sword King's swordsmanship, and even his beginner sword skills improve significantly. Training with Barad evokes a sense of déjà vu, just like when he trained with Dang. Hyunsu wonders if all swordmasters are this intense. Despite everything, Hyunsu is still worried about his low level. Because of his low level, he could only learn 3 chapters of Barad's swordsmanship. Barad had promised to teach Hyunsu the remaining chapters after he had sufficiently raised his level. After recovering from the intense training, Hyunsu goes to visit Barad to ask him for more special cold ore. But to his shock, he learns that the ore he used to craft the sword was the last remaining one. Hyunsu feels dejected, realizing this could disrupt his plans, but Barad lets him know that he can obtain more from the frost mine. Hyunsu is relieved to hear this but hesitates, wondering if it is okay for him to retrieve it alone. Barad then orders Bella to go to the frost mine with Hyunsu, but she refuses, insisting she prefers to stay by the king's side. Barad insists on telling her that it would be a good experience. Left with no other excuses, Bella reluctantly agrees to obey his request. Shortly after, Barad announces the good news of Ifrit's defeat to the kingdom. The chat network lights up again, celebrating Barad's success. Players are also fascinated by his new sword, marveling at the intense cold aura it exudes. During discussions about the materials, someone notices Hyun's name engraved on the sword. They also point out that the same name appeared on the boomerang arrow used by the recent martial arts tournament champion. Curiosity spreads among the players about Blacksmith Hyun's true identity. They speculate endlessly about his age, gender, and level, wondering when they can get a reveal. Bella, checking the chat from real life, smiles, happy that no one knows his true identity. She had cleverly spread the story that Hyunsu and Blacksmith Hyun are different people. Meanwhile, Jihoon laughs as he reads the wild speculations about Hyunsu. One player even guesses that Blacksmith Hyun is a pot-bellied otaku in his 40s. Jihoon bursts into laughter, finding it impossible to imagine Hyunsu as a chubby 40-year-old. Tired of all the wild speculations, everyone on the chat network eventually decides to just follow Blacksmith Hyun. Hyunsu sits quietly in a corner of his new apartment, watching as notifications of new followers flood in like a waterfall. The hype, he realizes, is because Barad had deliberately shown off Hyunsu's name on the sword during his victory speech to the Goyard Kingdom. Since then, Hyunsu's followers have skyrocketed from 100,000 to over 300,000. Hyunsu wonders what would happen if people discovered that Blacksmith Hyun and the martial arts tournament winner are the same person. He decides to be careful and keep it a secret for a while, knowing he still has many goals to achieve. Though he wants to log back into Aries to begin his Frost Mine quest, Hyunsu first remembers a favor he owes and quickly sends a message to an anonymous recipient. Elsewhere, Kang Hyunsuk sits in front of his monitor, checking the latest game updates. Seeing that Barad cleared Ifrit's tomb in just 3 tries, Hyunsuk concludes that the area must be extremely difficult for users to penetrate. Besides being a real estate investor, Hyunsuk is also an unofficial high-ranking player in the game, Aries. He has entered the Salamander dungeon multiple times for his quest, but has never been able to clear it because his artifacts keep melting under the extreme heat. Even unique grade items fail to withstand the dungeon's fire. Exhausted from repeated failures and frustrated that money cannot solve his problem, Hyunsuk is still searching for a skilled crafter to create durable artifacts. Just then, Hyunsuk receives a text from Hyunsu. He is surprised and delighted to finally hear from him. Hyunsu was contacting Hyunsuk to keep the promise he made about helping him craft an artifact. Hyunsuk had completely forgotten about it, but after thinking for a moment, he finally recalled their conversation the day Hyunsu came to clear his 300 million won debt. Hyunsu wants to know if Hyunsuk intends to add any new requirements to the artifact before he begins crafting. Hyunsuk is a bit excited and hopes this artifact can help him clear the Salamander dungeon. He responds to the message saying he has no other requirements. Hyunsuk also requests to know Hyunsu's level, but he is disappointed when he learns that it is only level 59. Still, Hyunsuk hopes that Hyunsu can help him make something reasonable. After responding to Hyunsu, he contemplates sending a request to Blacksmith Hyun as well. Hyunsuk worries that Blacksmith Hyun is too high class and would not accept a request from a ranked player. Since the class change quest is almost approaching, he decides to try his luck and message Blacksmith Hyun. Meanwhile, Hyunsu and Bella finally arrive at the Frost Mine. Hyunsu learns from the system that he is the first user to enter the Frost Mine, and for his reward, all EXP gain will be doubled. Hyunsu asks Bella if she has been to the mine, and she responds that it is also her first time there. Soon, a smug miner interrupts them, asking how they entered the Frost Mine. Bella introduces herself and whips out her royal permission slip to show him. Seeing the slip, the miner is excited because he has never seen a royal seal before. He introduces himself as Banya, saying he can't just let them wander around. However, since his father is the captain, Banya offers to guide them to him. Banya and Hyunsu immediately hit it off, but Bella is still her cold, aloof self. While going to see the captain, Hyunsu sees a bunch of weird monsters inside a section of the mine, and he asks Banya about it. Banya explains that the mine used to be some type of dungeon, rumored to contain monsters back in the day. However, about 100 years ago, a wizard sealed them away. Hyunsu learns that the crystal stuff on the monsters is the special cold iron. Banya warns him not to get greedy and step inside the sealed barrier, as that is their territory. He explains that although the sealed area has the most ore, coming out alive might not be possible. They soon meet up with the captain, and Banya bids them farewell before leaving. But he hides behind a rock, watching them instead of leaving. Banya wonders why an outsider would come all the way to the Frost Mine. Taking one look at Hyunsu and Bella, the captain, Rek deduces that they are an outsider and a royal knight. Hyunsu informs Rek that he seeks an ore superior to the normal 100-year cold iron. Although this extra special iron exists, Rek doesn't feel like telling them where to find it. He feels that outsiders are greedy, and once the news gets out, the mine will surely fall into chaos. Seeing that Hyunsu came with a royal knight, Rek contemplates how to politely turn him down. He decides to scare Hyunsu off by telling him to mine 40 ores in 1 week, which is difficult because an average miner can only extract 3 per day. He promises to tell him about the extra special ore if he can complete the task. The system immediately draws up the quest notification, including rewards and penalties for failure. Rek is feeling quite smug and asks Hyunsu if he accepts the offer. After pausing for a moment, Hyunsu confidently accepts and even claims he can mine 40 more than Rek asked him to. Rek is surprised, but he keeps his cool, saying that it is an impossible feat. Rek lets Hyunsu know that if he succeeds, he will personally mine the superior ore for him. He also warns that Bella must not assist Hyunsu on this task. Hyunsu agrees, and the two men seal the deal with a promise. Before leaving, he bows respectfully, promising to return for his reward in a week. Once they leave, Rek calls out for Banya, who is still hiding behind him. He grabs Banya by the ear and scolds him for running around while injured. Rek drags him away by his ear while still scolding him. Meanwhile, Bella starts scolding Hyunsu for provoking Rek by adding another 40 iron ore to the bet. Hyunsu ignores her nagging and proudly shows off his mining tools to her. He had already prepared it in advance before coming. Hyunsu is determined and vows to get that superior ore promised by Rek. Watching his strange behavior, Bella wonders why the king befriended such a crazy person. 1 week later, Rek sits in a corner, wondering what happened to Hyunsu. He heard from the miners that Hyunsu has not come out of the mine for a whole week. Rek finds it absurd and refuses to believe them. Just then, he sees Hyunsu walking out of the mine cheerfully, covered in dirt. Rek is feeling very confident that he didn't meet up to the requirement, so he asks Hyunsu to fulfill the bet. Hyunsu immediately pulls out 1 ore from his storage space. Rek feels quite satisfied as this is all he expected Hyunsu to amount to. But to his utmost horror, more ores spill out from the storage space. Soon Hyunsu shows him a whole mountain of special ore, about 200 in total. Rek is completely shocked and asks Hyunsu for his true identity. He wonders if Hyunsu is some legendary miner, but Hyunsu proudly announces that he's just a regular blacksmith. Apparently, Hyunsu's mining tool is his custom-made Damascus sword, which is currently serving as a pickaxe. This is the sword he crafted solely for cutting rock, and surprisingly, it can also transform into a pickaxe. Still struck speechless, Rek quietly stares at the heap of ore for a long moment before praising Hyunsu for finally carving a name for himself as a blacksmith. He apologizes for underestimating him and quickly invites him to dinner. Hyunsu accepts without hesitation, and Rek suggests bringing Bella along too. Later that night, the trio heads to a lively pub for dinner and drinks. They watch in surprise as Bella, ever so aloof, chugs down her beer quietly all by herself. Hyunsu and Rek try to get her to engage with them, but she refuses, claiming it makes her uncomfortable. Suddenly, a huge dude slams his hand on Hyunsu's shoulder, loudly praising him for mining 200 minerals. When the man learns that 20 of those minerals were rare frost iron, he's even more impressed. Curious, he asks to see Hyunsu's pickaxe, and Hyunsu readily shows it to him. Soon, a crowd of miners gathers around, admiring the pickaxe. Hyunsu instantly slips into salesman mode as he excitedly explains how incredible the tool is. He proudly adds that it can also transform into a sword with even more impressive qualities. Bella quietly drinks her beer while watching him light up as he talks about his craft. The miners are amazed by Hyunsu's mining skills and cheerfully urge him to drink more with them. Before long, Hyunsu joins them wholeheartedly, drinking until he completely zones out. The following day, Rek brings Hyunsu to the mine to show him where he can obtain the superior ore. Hyunsu feels a pit in his stomach when Rek points toward the sealed section where the monsters are contained. Rek assures him that the 1,000-year frost iron lies somewhere inside the barrier. Frustrated, Hyunsu asks how he's supposed to retrieve it when the monsters are still in there. Rek simply feigns ignorance and tells him to figure it out on his own. While Hyunsu is still struggling to process the situation, Rek casually waves goodbye and leaves. Hyunsu freezes when the system suddenly notifies him that a new story is beginning. To his shock, he learns that the barrier has weakened, because a full century has passed since the mage Balloon created it. The monsters trapped inside for 100 years are now on the verge of going berserk, and the system warns that the barrier will completely break in 3 minutes. Panicking, Hyunsu sprints after Rek, calling him back. He urgently explains the barrier situation and advises Rek to evacuate the miners immediately. Rek starts to brush off his worry, but he stops mid-sentence when the mine suddenly shakes and begins to collapse, leaving everyone stunned. Chaos soon erupts as Rek orders everyone to evacuate immediately. Hyunsu warns them again about the incoming monsters, but Rek insists he should leave first while they rescue the trapped miners. The other miners also urge Hyunsu and Bella to escape, saying they can't abandon their comrades. Rek, still confident, explains that the structural magic designed for collapse situations must have activated, so it should be safe to rescue those inside. But Hyunsu feels a deep unease, knowing from the quest details that this magic will fail to activate properly, meaning the monsters will break out at any moment. Hyunsu grows even more frustrated as he tries to figure out what to do, when suddenly another quest notification appears. According to the system, 58 miners are trapped inside the collapsing tunnels, and the 38 outside are also in danger. The quest orders Hyunsu to ensure that every miner survives both the collapse and the incoming monster attack. His reward will depend entirely on how many miners make it out alive. Hyunsu is irritated by how casually the system treats the miners, as if they're livestock. Even though they're just NPCs, he still genuinely feels bad for them. Determined to save everyone, Hyunsu immediately draws his weapon, ready to take on the monsters. He instructs Bella to deal with any creature that slips past him. Watching his unwavering confidence, Bella quietly wonders where he gets such boldness from. Hyunsu simply turns and proudly declares that outsiders are basically immortal, which only makes her stare at him in disbelief. He plans to wait for the monsters at the barrier entrance while she stays behind in case any slip past him. Moments later, the monsters gather on the other side of the weakening barrier, waiting eagerly for it to shatter. Hyunsu looks down at his Damascus sword, wondering if it's strong enough to handle them. After thinking it over, he realizes it probably isn't. He quickly abandons the idea of relying on his sword and decides to craft something entirely new. He prepares to use his emergency crafting skill to make a weapon with a divine attribute, using even more of his precious minerals. Hyunsu can only hope it works out since this is his first time activating such. While crafting the emergency weapon, Hyunsu wonders what kind of effects he can produce by pouring in a large amount of high-quality minerals. He silently hopes the finished weapon will meet his expectations and deliver truly devastating damage to the monsters. Moments later, he activates the divine emergency craft, forging a massive sky iron greatsword that glows with power. Almost immediately, the system begins the countdown for the barrier break. When the timer reaches its final second, a violent explosion erupts, signaling the shattering of the barrier, yet Hyunsu is already braced for the incoming monster invasion. Only moments after the blast, several monsters, including a high-level stone troll, a stone orc, and even a stone wolf, charge out of the previously sealed area. The system quickly warns Hyunsu that his special emergency weapon will vanish after a single swing. As the monsters rush forward, Hyunsu grips the greatsword and dashes toward them without hesitation, swearing he won't allow a single creature to slip past him. Hyunsu takes a giant leap toward the monsters, fiercely swinging his sky iron greatsword at them. With just one swing, the sword releases a frost storm, which unleashes a barrage of frost iron spikes that pierce several monsters at once. Unfortunately, Hyunsu's special weapon disappears after the attack. Watching all the frozen monsters, Hyunsu is still amazed by the sword's massive effect despite its one-use policy. Even though he has completely taken out this wave of monsters, Hyunsu worries that more will appear inside the dungeon. He wonders how the trapped miners are coping. Meanwhile, the miners are busy relentlessly digging to rescue several other comrades trapped in the rubble. Hyunsu stands in the middle of the chaos, watching them work to save their comrades. He really wants to save them because he considers them people instead of just ordinary NPCs. Seeing them throw themselves into a dangerous situation just to save their friends reminds Hyunsu of when he jumped into an inferno to save his father. Then and there, he swears to save everyone from their impending doom. Soon, another wave of monsters charges towards the entrance, but this time, Hyunsu plans to lure them to a secluded place to prevent any collateral damage. He quickly sprints towards another entrance, leading the monsters away. Hyunsu summons his Damascus sword and immediately starts taking down the creatures one by one. After a fierce battle, he takes out a bunch of them, but suddenly a huge one appears from nowhere, almost pounding him to a pulp. Fortunately, he responds just in time, cutting down the giant monster's weapon. After that, Hyunsu successfully slashes the monster, defeating it. Just when he breathes a sigh of relief, a fresh new batch of monsters suddenly surrounds Hyunsu, preparing to feast on him. Hyunsu takes a deep breath and decides to finally put into use the Sword King's swordsmanship that he learned from Barad. Just like that, he unleashes the sword fury on the horde of monsters, swiftly chopping them up into pieces in a very short second. After chopping up the monster meat using the sword fury method, Hyunsu is burned out and immediately collapses in the middle of the dead horde. Before completely passing out, he learns from the system that he has successfully cleared out the illusion dungeon. Another notification pops up notifying him that all 96 miners have been saved. Hearing about his new remarkable achievements, Hyunsu is so excited that the fainting spell clears from his eyes. To his surprise, the system notifies him that he can also manipulate the situation to receive even more rewards from the miner captain, Rek. Hyunsu is confused by the request, but he decides to take advantage of it anyway. He was satisfied just with saving everyone, but since they're offering him this opportunity, Hyunsu decides to accept it. Moments after struggling to rise back up, he gets a good idea of how to manipulate things. Meanwhile, Rek is still busy helping the injured miners. After taking care of the last one, he proudly announces that no one was lost in the mine collapse or monster attack. The miners erupt in joyful cheer as they hug each other, sincerely happy to have survived a crazy situation. Bella, on the other hand, stands quietly in their midst, watching as the miners happily congratulate each other for surviving. She then tells Rek that Hyunsu lured the monsters further into the dungeon. Rek hadn't noticed before, but he realizes now that Hyunsu is actually missing. The miners are also stunned when they hear about Hyunsu's heroic act. They all realize that Hyunsu is the reason they didn't see any monsters earlier. Rek says he did it to protect them, and as captain, he plans to save the last one of their mining family, Hyunsu. With renewed determination, he invites the miners without injuries to follow him into the dungeon in search of Hyunsu. They all agree, and moments later, the group sets out with torches into the dungeon, calling out his name. They all searched for a long time but couldn't find Hyunsu's whereabouts. Moments later, one of the miners calls the attention of the others while pointing towards Hyunsu, who has collapsed beside a rock. Everyone immediately rushes over, calling out his name. Someone points out that Hyunsu might be severely injured. Bella pulls him into an embrace, calling him foolish for facing the monsters alone. Suddenly, her eyes widen as she realizes that his heartbeat is stable. In order to calm the frantic group, she wants to tell them that Hyunsu's injuries are not serious. But suddenly, Hyunsu tugs at her hand to stop, and he quietly tells her to shut up for a moment. To her shock, Hyunsu stands up by himself, and pretending to be pitiful, he lets them know that he was able to defeat all the monsters despite the narrowing situation. Bella is speechless, watching him shamelessly spin the pitiful sob story while acting like a green tea beach. Although she is the only one who knows what is going on, Rek unfortunately buys into his bullcrap. Feeling extremely guilty, he grabs Hyunsu's hand and thanks him for saving them. He also apologizes for getting too engrossed with saving the mining team that they momentarily forgot all about him inside the dungeon. Rek soon bursts into tears, saying that Hyunsu has done way too much for them, while they only offered him a measly meal and beer. Taking advantage of the situation, Hyunsu explains that he saved them because they treated him and Bella like their family. He adds that he was touched by how they cared for themselves also. Rek is relieved that everyone is now safe, but he still feels terrible for allowing Hyunsu to throw himself into danger to save them. He continues to cry, embracing Hyunsu violently, and in the process shoving Bella into a corner. Just like that, all the miners rally to help their savior out of the dungeon safely. The system notifies Hyunsu that his manipulation tactics were successful, and now the miners will never forget him. He grins proudly, seeing that his drama queen abilities didn't go to waste, while Bella quietly watches him in disbelief. Hyunsu gives a thumbs up, which drives her crazy because just moments ago, she was starting to actually like him. But now, she is truly convinced that Hyunsu is a con artist. The following day, Hyunsu wakes up and nearly jumps out of bed when he sees Banya standing over him. As Banya calls out to the others to announce that Hyunsu is awake, Rek bursts into the room as well, checking on him with visible relief. Behind Rek, the rest of the miners crowd around the doorway, peeking inside like curious kids. Since Hyunsu plans to leave the next day, Rek says there's something important he wants to tell him. He quickly gathers everyone, and with a big grin, Rek announces that all the miners will be working solely for Hyunsu today. Hyunsu is taken aback as they explain that this is their way of repaying him for saving their lives during the crisis. Rek then promises to personally locate the 1,000-year frost iron for him. Hyunsu, still pretending not to be concerned about the reward, insists he only did what anyone would have done. After declaring their resolve, the other miners file out of the room, leaving only Rek, Banya, and Hyunsu behind. Rek awkwardly asks for a favor, but instead of explaining, he tells Banya to speak for him. Banya jokes around for a second, stammering dramatically, but then his expression turns serious as he kneels and begs to become Hyunsu's follower. Instantly, the system notifies Hyunsu that the future legendary miner Banya has pledged loyalty to him. It grants Hyunsu permission to accept Banya as a retainer, leaving him completely stunned and speechless. Meanwhile, in the real world, the relations officer of the special user management team is suffering through yet another round of exhausting overtime, thanks to Hyunsu's latest stunt. She desperately wishes the team leader were around to handle the fallout from his new expanding influence on the game. She can't understand why yet another legendary NPC has gone off script and offered himself to Hyunsu, who doesn't have a territory or even hold a guildmaster title. Hyunsu tries to turn down Banya's offer, insisting that he's just an ordinary guy with no qualifications to lead anyone. But Banya refuses to back down. He admits that he secretly watched Hyunsu mine those 200 minerals a week ago, and the sight left a deep impression on him. What truly sealed his resolve was seeing Hyunsu throw himself into danger to save a group of ordinary miners without hesitation. That courage made Banya respect him wholeheartedly, which is why he's now determined to become Hyunsu's follower. Suddenly fired up, Banya begs Hyunsu to accept him, swearing that he'll mine, fight, and swing his pickaxe proudly under Hyunsu's banner. Seeing his sincerity, Hyunsu feels tempted to accept, but his hesitation makes Banya worry that Hyunsu is rejecting him because he has no power or title yet. Hyunsu quickly denies it, saying he is just not ready to lead anyone yet. After a moment of thought, he finally agrees to accept Banya as his retainer and promises to summon him once he establishes a proper base of operations. Banya's face instantly lights up, and before Hyunsu can react, the boy leaps forward and hugs him tightly, overwhelmed with joy. Right then, the system notifies Hyunsu that the retainer contract is complete and that he can now view Banya's profile. After reading it, Hyunsu is thrilled to have gained such a capable and rare ally. Once the excitement dies down, Banya immediately asks when they will meet again. Hyunsu promises it won't be long, and Banya excitedly vows to keep mining nonstop until Hyunsu returns for him. Behind them, Rek watches the two quietly, listening as they continue discussing their plans with enthusiasm. On the day of his departure, while waiting for Rek and the miners, Hyunsu checks his mining stats to see that he had obtained 415 iron ores and 1 frost steel. Moments later, Rek proudly unveils an entire truckload of unique 1,000-year frost ore, presenting it to Hyunsu. He explains that although it shares the same name, This particular type has been buried for nearly 6,000 years, making it far more potent and valuable. Hyunsu is completely stunned, unable to process the crazy amount of treasures in front of him. Bella snickers beside him, teasing that at least all his dramatic performance in the dungeon paid off. Hyunsu quickly shuts her mouth, not wanting Rek to overhear them. Rek then thanks Hyunsu for giving him the opportunity to mine the 1,000-year frost ore, something he never expected to accomplish in his entire career. Hyunsu and Bella thank everyone earnestly and even bow deeply to show their appreciation. The miners urge them to stay just a little longer, clearly not wanting to part ways yet. Banya even bursts into tears like a drama queen and runs toward Hyunsu. Before leaving, Hyunsu pulls out his Damascus pickaxe to hand it over to Banya. He smiles slyly, knowing he'll keep earning ores as long as Banya uses it. Banya is deeply moved when he receives the tool and immediately releases another waterfall of tears, pledging his undying loyalty to his master. Meanwhile, Hyunsu is secretly so pleased with himself that he almost feels guilty for the trick. As Hyunsu and Bella prepare to step into the portal, everyone bids them farewell, urging him to return soon and preferably as a better liquor expert. Bella quietly watches how warmly Hyunsu interacts with the miners. Despite her initial judgment, she's impressed by how he earned their trust by diving into danger for them without a single thought for his own safety. She murmurs a soft compliment before stepping into the portal. Hyunsu turns, hearing only Bella calling him cool before she vanishes completely into the portal. He quickly hurries after her, demanding she repeat what she said earlier. A few days later, in the Salamander dungeon, Hyunsuk is frustrated after repeatedly failing to clear the level. No matter how many attempts he makes, he always gets stuck midway. He even hired the 11th ranked Blacksmith to craft a shield, but it couldn't withstand the dungeon's intense heat. Just as Kang Hyunsuk begins to lose hope, a message bird appears with a gift from Hyunsu. Hyunsuk accepts it, still skeptical because of Hyunsu's low level. But the moment he opens the package, he's stunned by what he finds inside, wondering if the item is the result of a system bug. Hyunsuk is completely stunned to find a unique, custom-made shield inside Hyunsu's gift pack. The shield is modeled after the legendary Aegis and would only need a few more authentic materials to become an exact replica of the divine artifact said to have been wielded by Zeus himself. As he examines the craftsmanship of the shield, Hyunsuk is deeply impressed by Hyunsu's extraordinary talent. The shield's design features Medusa's head, which is capable of turning men to stone, a concept Hyunsuk immediately recognizes as a masterpiece. Just then, a system notification reminds him that he has only an hour and 30 minutes left to complete the quest. Hyunsuk ignores the warning, too absorbed in admiring his new artifact. He hopes that with this game-changing shield, he finally stands a chance of clearing the difficult level. With renewed determination, Hyunsuk steels himself and enters the Salamander dungeon once more, ready to face the final challenge. Meanwhile, Hyunsu is with Nell in the reception hall of the Goyard Kingdom. Nell happily thanks him for escorting her there, noting that it's been quite a while since they last met. Hyunsu explains that after leaving the frost mine, he had logged out to look after his father for a while. Curious and concerned, Nell gently asks if his father has shown any signs of waking from the coma. Hyunsu admits there has been no change yet, though he's still hoping for a miracle soon. Hearing this, Nell decides they should focus on discussing the setup of his guild. She gives Hyunsu a stack of papers to show him all her plans so far. Nell suggests they keep the guild small and exclusive for the time being. According to her, their first goal is to make Blacksmith Hyun very famous throughout Ares. Nell explains that rather than teaming up with high-level players immediately, it is far more strategic to raise Hyunsu's reputation first, which will in turn make their guild grow much faster. She then asks him to select some good founding members for the guild D, and Hyunsu immediately thinks of Jihun. After racking his brain for more members, Hyunsu draws a complete blank because he has not had enough time to build connections with any other players. Suddenly he remembers Kang Hyunsuk and gives Nell his username, Bark. Nell searches for it, but Hyunsuk's profile is set to private. She asks him for any other information, but Hyunsu knows absolutely nothing. Annoyed, Nell scolds him for recommending someone without even knowing the most basic details about them. Hyunsu, however, doesn't care because Hyunsuk helped him when he was at his lowest, and that is all that matters to him. Nell then asks if Hyunsuk runs a business, and Hyunsu excitedly confirms it, wondering how she guessed. Nell sighs, disappointed by Hyunsu's naivety. She assumes this mysterious dude is just some evil overlord who is trying to use Hyunsu's rising fame to launch a business in Ares. Hyunsu waves off her suspicion, insisting that Hyunsuk isn't that kind of person. Since founding members are ultimately the guildmaster's decision, Nell reluctantly drops the argument. Still, she insists she must meet Hyunsuk before they reveal Hyunsu's true identity to him. To her shock, Hyunsu casually mentions that he already placed his blacksmith signature on the gift he sent out earlier, leaving Nell absolutely speechless. Somewhere inside the salamander dungeon, Hyunsuk is still kicking monster butt with his new digs. And shortly after, he defeats the monster using the shield. He is stunned that the shield even has other features beyond his imagination. While still reveling in its greatness, Hyunsuk is shocked when he sees Blacksmith Hyun's symbol behind the shield. He finally makes the connection, realizing that Hyunsu is also the legendary Blacksmith Hyun. Once again, he is surprised by Hyunsu's ability and wonders how to repay him. Suddenly, a towering figure materializes out of nowhere and ambushes Hyunsuk from behind. The crazed, cloaked figure hurls several more blazing fireballs, attempting to bury him under a raging inferno. When the explosion finally settles, Hyunsuk is shocked to find himself still standing safely behind his shield. The cloaked figure is also surprised that he actually survived the attack. It then demands to know the name of the shield's creator. The cloaked figure proceeds to launch another series of attacks, threatening to destroy Hyunsuk's core self, not just his avatar, if he refuses to answer. Hyunsuk desperately tries his best to dodge the attacks, refusing to betray his friend. He chooses to quit Ares completely if the monster decides to hunt him in its true form. Seeing that Hyunsuk remains steadfast, the figure unleashes an even more devastating attack. Hyunsuk braces himself and uses his shield to block the impact. At that moment, the cloaked figure, revealed to be the Fire Queen's avatar, casts her final blow, Death Hand, intending to erase him completely. Yet even after the terrifying strike, Hyunsuk only loses a few HP thanks to the shield's incredible power. Seeing that he still has 33 HP remaining, Hyunsuk marvels at the shield's unbelievable durability. To his shock, he realizes that the shield actually responds to his will because it is infused with Hyunsu's heartfelt wishes for a friend. Suddenly, a brilliant light erupts, and the shield transforms into a spear right in his hands. The Fire Queen freezes, speechless at the unbelievable sight. As Hyunsuk charges forward to retaliate, he activates a hidden skill called Frost of Aegis. The Fire Queen also prepares to counterattack with powerful magic, but before she can make a move, Hyunsuk unleashes the Frost of Aegis directly at her. The transformed spear immediately pierces through her head, ultimately defeating the Fire Queen's avatar. A moment later, Hyunsuk finally receives the prompt confirming the dungeon quest completion, along with a crimson dragon armor as his reward. Then a sudden explosion erupts in front of him as the system notifies him that he has completed a secret trial. Apparently, this is because of his refusal to expose Hyunsu's identity despite the impending danger. For completing this hidden loyalty challenge successfully, Hyunsuk is granted the qualification as a growing warrior, which is a rare hidden class promotion as his reward. Basically, a growing warrior is an epic class promotion, and they can even rise to the rank of a legend. Apparently, this is a special class dedicated to protecting loved ones. After learning the true purpose of the dungeon quest, the system recommends that Hyunsuk join a guild. He thinks about it for a moment, and decides to talk to Hyunsu first. Later, Hyunsuk meets Hyunsu and Nell at a bar. The moment he enters, he causes a stir as everyone admires his top-tier armor. Even Nell is surprised by his aura and decides to tread carefully. Seeing his expensive gear and knowing he runs a business in the real world, she assumes he must be someone incredible. Hyunsuk reaches their table and drops his serious vibe, excitedly thanking Hyunsu for helping him clear the dungeon quest. He is about to mention Hyunsu's connection to Blacksmith Hyun when Nell quickly stops him from revealing it in public. Hyunsuk turns and notices her presence for the first time. Many people in the pub were already listening to their conversation, so Hyunsuk offers to pay their bill and move somewhere private to continue. Soon they arrive at the exclusive Goyard Kingdom private lounge. Hyunsuk immediately continues from where he left off and explains that he made the connection between Hyunsu and the legendary blacksmith after seeing the seal on the shield. Nell notes that Hyunsuk, also known as Bark, is a very straightforward guy. Hyunsu says he carved his mark on purpose because he didn't want to hide his identity from him. Hyunsuk gestures for him to come closer, and when he does, he places a hand on Hyunsu's shoulder, thanking him once again. Apparently, Hyunsuk had suspected Hyunsu's identity when he paid back the 330 million won debt to buy back the forge. But now, he was completely sure that Hyunsu was even more outstanding than he expected. Remembering how someone tried to steal his artifact in the dungeon, Hyunsuk now genuinely considers Hyunsu a friend. Since Hyunsu has no plans of revealing his identity, Hyunsuk agrees to help keep it secret. Hyunsu thanks him, and Nell feels terrible for talking trash about him earlier. Nell quickly introduces herself to Hyunsuk as Hyunsu's manager and sincerely apologizes for misjudging him. Hyunsuk is confused, so she explains the whole evil business overlord misconception she had. Hyunsuk chuckles, telling her that she isn't entirely wrong. He explains that a lot of people will definitely covet Hyunsu's skill. He adds that he even considered forming a guild with Hyunsu, but never planned to exploit him. Hyunsuk is relieved knowing someone like Nell is around Hyunsu. After thinking for a moment, Hyunsu invites Hyunsuk to join his guild. Hyunsuk is surprised, and Hyunsu explains that he wants them to share in the joy of growing something together as friends. The tension rises as they wait for his answer, and moments later he cheerfully agrees. After accepting, Hyunsuk properly introduces himself as User Bark, a level 311 growing warrior. Nell is stunned when she realizes he has the potential to reach the legendary class. Hyunsuk feels that reaching legendary status is nothing special for someone like Hyunsu, since he is Blacksmith Hyun, but he is completely shocked when Hyunsu introduces himself as the god of blacksmiths. The two men shake hands, sealing their cooperation, while Nell quietly watches with satisfaction. They continue feasting after the successful recruitment. Hyunsuk then hands Hyunsu a return gift of 400 million won. Hyunsu tries to refuse but freezes with wide eyes when he sees the amount. He insists it's too much, yet Hyunsuk refuses to take it back. Moments later, Nell finally gets her chance when Hyunsuk asks about their guild plans. She immediately lights up and explains their star strategy in detail. Hyunsuk likes her direction and urges her to continue. Nell excitedly shares that she plans to feature the hottest, scandal-free, handsome player, Hyunsu, on a live broadcast. Hyunsu, who has been busy stuffing his face with meat, stops instantly. The idea of going live makes him very uncomfortable, and he rejects it on the spot. Basically, after Aries grew in popularity, Purium Corp partnered with many broadcasters, flooding public and online platforms with Aries-related content. Among them, AJ Internet Broadcasting Station once had the highest viewership thanks to their live streams of Aries players. But the station has been declining recently. Today, at AJ Broadcasting, everyone is scrambling as they prepare for another live stream. With only an hour left, the producer is a bundle of nerves because of their awful ratings. Another dude tries to calm him, saying he has managed to pull in a bit of attention. Apparently, Blacksmith Hyun refused to appear on their show but connected them to the martial arts tournament champion. The two men pray that this will bring in at least some viewers, since this might be their last chance before the station shuts down. As the broadcast countdown begins, the chat explodes with viewers speculating about the new guest. Most people have already given up hope because recent guests always turn out ugly. The show, called The Room of Truth, exposes a guest's real height, weight, and other stats exactly as they are. Moments later, the stream starts and the host, MC Tumps, takes the stage. Everyone on the chat hope they can finally see Blacksmith Hyun. Once again, they start speculating about his pot-bellied identity. The host then introduces Hyunsu as the martial arts tournament champion and invites him into the Room of Truth. The moment his handsome face appears on screen, the chat section explodes. Both Hyunsu and the MC are confused as they stare at the flood of question marks in the chat. Hyunsu even worries there might be a system glitch. Someone finally explains that the viewers are freaking out because of his looks. Suddenly, a user named Rowoon donates 500,000 won, asking when Blacksmith Hyun will appear. It turns out Rowoon is Korea's #1 forge master, Kilma. Even Hyunsu is shocked to see his name pop up in the donation feed. A few days earlier in the Black Anvil Guild conference room, 4 members gathered to discuss what to do about Blacksmith Hyun. Sylvia complained that it was unnecessary to call an emergency meeting during their busiest period just because of one blacksmith. Dox countered by explaining that Hyun had blown up in popularity after crafting a sword for Barad. Vaughn didn't think their guild had any reason to feel threatened by some ordinary celebrity blacksmith, but Dox argued that they should recruit him before his fame grew even bigger. After listening to everyone, the guildmaster, Rowoon, decided to postpone any decision until he could personally see Blacksmith Hyun. This is the reason Rowoon is watching today's stream and demanding to see Blacksmith Hyun. Everyone on the broadcast is shocked to see him in the viewer list. MC Tumps announces Rowoon's presence and thanks him for the donation, thrilled because having the #2 ranked blacksmith and the master of the #1 domestic guild watching their failing stream is massive. Tumps immediately tries to ride the hype, urging others to donate. Soon after, Blacksmith Hyun donates 100,000 won, stating he will only accept an interview through Hyunsu. Tumps nearly faints from excitement, but only Hyunsu knows that Nell is behind this brilliant plan of splitting him into 2 separate personas. Tumps officially begins the interview and asks Hyunsu to introduce his age and occupation. Hyunsu replies that he's 23 and currently just a gamer. The chat goes wild again when he mentions he doesn't have a girlfriend. Female players in particular flood the stream with donations, openly volunteering themselves as his girlfriend. Tumps is thrilled, while Hyunsu sits there confused because he hasn't even said anything special, yet the donations keep pouring in. Tumps decides to ask a few questions about Blacksmith Hyun next. Nell had already arranged for Hyunsu to pretend he was speaking with Hyun through an earpiece, so when Tumps fires off a few basic questions, Hyunsu keeps touching his ear as if receiving answers. He only responds to the question about Hyun's job, claiming everything else must remain a secret. The vague replies frustrate the viewers, and the chat starts to sour. Tumps panics and whispers for Hyunsu not to ruin their momentum. Hyunsu also worries that dodging too many questions will damage Hyun's reputation. With sudden resolve, he blurts out that he wants to introduce himself through his works. Realizing his slip, he quickly touches the earpiece again, pretending he was only relaying Hyun's words. Tumps immediately presses the button to play the special fantasy content he prepared for Blacksmith Hyun's collaboration with the martial arts tournament champion. Tumps explains that it is called the Time Attack Dungeon Mission, where Blacksmith Hyun must craft 3 artifacts within 10 days, and Hyun-soo must use that artifact to clear the dungeon. The viewers complain that the mission is difficult, and even Tumps is a bit uneasy, but he secretly vows to revive their channel using this mission. From behind the scenes, Rowoon makes a bet after donating 100,000 won. He promises to donate 1 million if Hyun crafts a rare artifact, 3 million for epic, and 10 million for a unique artifact. Rowoon adds that the condition for failing the mission is that Hyun will reveal all the information on Barad's sword. After pretending to speak to Hyun, Hyun-soo accepts the challenge on his behalf. After the chaotic interview at AJ Station, Nell is seen checking out the community chat. She asks Hyun-soo how it feels to be famous, but he is too engrossed in his planning to reply. Nell has to tap him on the shoulder to get his attention. She wonders what type of amazing stuff he plans to make, but Hyun-soo has not figured anything specific yet. Seeing that Rowoon is trying to undermine him, Hyun-soo plans to make unique grade artifacts for the challenge. Nell thinks that this whole saga feels like a duel between him and Rowoon, but Hyun-soo denies it. Nell insists that it is because if he wins this bet, then apart from the donations, his fame would also skyrocket. Losing, of course, would mean a drastic drop in his value. Therefore, Hyun-soo is determined to win no matter what. Hyun-soo immediately thanks Nell for motivating him again. Just when Nell is basking in the warm feeling of his gratitude, Hyun-soo throws her out of his workshop to focus on his work, leaving Nell standing outside in disbelief. 10 days later, the station begins to live stream the Time Attack Dungeon mission. This time, the producer is stunned to see over 80,000 viewers on their stream. The show writer, Kim, is also nervously hoping the stream will go viral. Moments later, Tumps announces the beginning of the show as Hyun-soo arrives at the Time Attack Dungeon to face the monsters. The challenge, which is considered simple, is to break through about 40 monsters and destroy a red jewel on a hill located 400 meters away. According to Tumps, some dude named Prow holds the shortest time record of 1 minute, 23 seconds, and he is also number 7 on the unified rankings. Apparently, this record has not been broken yet, and the reward for breaking it is 10 million won. Hearing the prize for beating Prow's record, the chat section blows up. A few moments later, the countdown ends, prompting Hyun-soo to start the mission. Hyun-soo stands on top of a hill watching the monsters below. He then shows off his gauntlet to the viewers, announcing that it is his first artifact for today. The viewers are skeptical about trashing monsters with an ordinary gauntlet, so they begin to make fun of him. Hyun-soo prepares to fire his favorite bow and arrow, using the gauntlet to boost its destructive power and other stats. He immediately fires a shot toward the monsters, and in seconds the arrow shatters the red jewel on the hill. The system immediately notifies him that he has completed stage 1 of the mission and even set a new record of 41 seconds. Tumps excitedly congratulates Hyun-soo for his new record and for winning the 10 million won prize. Hyun-soo shockingly reveals that his reward will be 20 million instead of 10, leaving Tumps confused. Meanwhile, Rowoon and his members are also quietly watching the stream, and to their surprise, Hyun-soo announces that his gauntlet is a unique grade artifact. After reminding Rowoon about their bet, Hyun-soo proudly announces that his gauntlet is a unique grade artifact. Rowoon immediately tells him to reveal the item's information, and Hyun-soo agrees without hesitation. After displaying the gauntlet's detailed stats, Rowoon is finally convinced of its authenticity, and immediately transfers the promised reward for crafting a unique grade item, which is 10 million won. Hyun-soo thanks him for the money and then announces that Blacksmith Hyun intends to sell the artifact through a live auction during the broadcast. Before leaving their viewing room, Rowoon instructs his members to keep monitoring the situation closely and to contact him only if something important happens. Moments later, Hyun-soo starts the auction at 10,000 gold, but no one places a bid at first. He starts feeling uneasy, wondering if the price is too high or if they miscalculated the audience's interest. The starting price was actually set by Nell, and now Hyun-soo is questioning whether it was a smart call on her part. Suddenly, someone bids 15,000 gold for the item, breaking the silence. And just like that, the bids begin pouring in at a rapid pace, leaving Hyun-soo completely speechless. Soon, the bid climbs all the way to 40,000 gold, surprising even Hyun-soo with how quickly the value skyrockets. Overwhelmed with excitement, he bows deeply and thanks everyone, telling them to continue sending their bid requests directly to Hyun's forge. Shortly after, the second stage of the challenge begins, and Tumps urges the audience to keep sending their bid interests. For this stage, Hyun-soo has to defeat a giant level 121 Cyclops. As the Cyclops prepares to attack, Hyun-soo leaps into the air above it and tries to strike with his sword. Unfortunately, The Cyclops lands a devastating blow on him. The viewers are certain that Hyunsu is done for, but to their surprise, he fiercely charges toward the monster again, leaving everyone completely confused. The Cyclops tries to counter the attack, but Hyunsu's sword shatters the creature's weapon. Not giving it time to recover, Hyunsu swiftly delivers another strike, instantly defeating it. The viewers are left stunned by his insane one-hit kill and begin speculating wildly about the weapon's grade. Hyunsu laughs at their guesses, especially when someone confidently claims the sword must be a rare grade item. The impatient viewers urge him to reveal the grade, but he ignores them, trying to build even more suspense and momentum. After the anticipation reaches its peak, he finally reveals the stats, and the viewers are disappointed to see that it is just a normal grade, something even a regular blacksmith could craft. Apparently, it was supposed to be a unique grade great sword, but Hyunsu was penalized for using his god's emergency crafting twice in a row, which caused the grade to drop by 2 tiers. Hyunsu feels terrible and tries to laugh it off, but deep down he is deeply disappointed. Now Blacksmith Hyun's reputation begins to plummet as people speculate that his earlier success might have been pure luck and nothing more. Rowoon also feels that Hyun was just lucky the first time. He receives a call from one of his members, and Rowoon still advises that they recruit Hyun despite the disappointing result. He wants them to offer a 2 billion won signing bonus to secure Hyun for their guild. After the call, Rowoon wonders if that price is a bit excessive, but he quickly dismisses the thought. He wants his guild to secure all skilled blacksmiths, no matter the cost. Suddenly, he notices the penalty on the sword description and wonders exactly what it means. Meanwhile, Tumps announces the successful end of the second stage and immediately introduces the final, most difficult stage. He explains that Hyunsu must retrieve a flag from the hill while avoiding a swarm of boss-level monsters. The catch is that he must reach the destination without being forcibly logged out even once. Tumps proudly announces that the boss-level monsters for the final level are level 138 werewolves. Basically, werewolves have extremely thick hides, making them difficult to hunt even for users of the same level. This is why the success rate for this final stage is only 20%, and the current record holder barely managed to pass it. After explaining the final level, Tumps tells Hyunsu to begin the mission. Acting all pitiful, Hyunsu decides to put the poor weapon saga behind him and face the current challenge head-on. He freezes for a moment as the viewers urge him to start the mission. Hyunsu, ever the drama queen, dramatically announces that he has no intention of running away from the monsters like a coward. Due to the level of his last weapon and Hyunsu's low grade, everyone is already underestimating him. They call him arrogant, wondering what he plans to do instead of running away like a normal player. Hyunsu soon reveals his next weapon, a bow of some sorts, claiming that he plans to hunt down the boss-level werewolves using it. The viewers immediately call his claim a bluff, advising him to just run away instead of acting all cool. Using his bow, Hyunsu confidently fires a shot toward the horde of monsters, and in less than a second, the arrow hits one of the monsters and then carves a strange circular pattern on the ground beneath the rest of them. Suddenly, an explosion erupts there, ultimately destroying all the monsters in its radius. Hyunsu is quietly pleased with the devastating effect of this new weapon. The viewers, however, are left completely baffled by the insane effect of a single strange arrow, prompting them to urge Hyunsu to reveal the artifact's full information. Hyunsu proudly shows them the bow, explaining that it was crafted based on a Jeju Island mythology. He details that it was modeled after the legendary bow said to have been used by the Great Star King to shoot down the sun and the moon. Hyunsu calls the weapon the 1,000-pound bow. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment next part in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.